He reminds me a lot of guy I had the privilege to work with in Dallas, Brendan Morrow. Fights for the team, fights for the right reasons, scores goals, plays hard. Everybody wants to be around him, and he's got quiet, strong leadership qualities. And you know, again, getting back to how this started, you add Broberg and Holloway to him and some of these other guys, Kyrou, Thomas. We're just trying to build a team, and he's a massive part of that. And I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Jake's on and off the ice.
That's what Doug Armstrong had to say about Jake Neighbors during the offseason. With Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex, we got the news just a little bit ago. Jake Neighbors has officially signed a 2-year contract with the St. Louis Blues. It'll be worth $7.5 million in total, $3.5 million essentially per year. This is a bridge deal. He was not up for a new contract right now, but they give him a little bit of that money up front. He gets a $3 million bump this year in salary. He was supposed to be an RFA this upcoming offseason. Instead, he will be under contract for another year. And then he hits RFA status again, which is just interesting in terms of the timing, because that allows the Blues to make some determinations on what this roster is going to look like long term. How does Jake Neighbors perform over the next couple of years? This is cost certainty for the team going into next offseason. It avoids any offer sheet issues potentially. It's a smart move by the organization. I was wondering if they would go a little longer term with Jake Neighbors and just make that decision either right now or in the offseason. I like what they did here. I'm not sure there's anybody that's going to have a negative thing to say about this. Smart move.
Yeah, it's a really smart move. I mean, look, you buy out 1 year of that entry-level contract for him, and so you kind of put the cookie in front of Jake Neighbors to say, look, what you did last season was impressive. We want to see that more, but if you want to get paid like the Thomas and the Kyrous and the Pavel Buchneviches, you got 3 years to go out there and prove yourself to be the $8 million player. So it's the return of that bridge deal that I thought Doug Armstrong was so good at. He did it with Robert Thomas. He did this with Jaden Schwartz. I specifically remember the one with Schwartz because it was a $2.5 million deal for 2 years. Schwartz went off and he got paid. He got 5 years at like $5.5 million. So the bridge contracts just... it forces that player to continue to excel at the area that you're looking for. And not that Jake Neighbors wouldn't, but you're 22 years old, and now you've got 2 more years of certainty with this club, and you're getting a little bit better money than the league minimum that you were making. But on the flip side of this is just smart management by Doug Armstrong to set the roster up for Alexander Steen. So Steen's going to take over after next season. That's when Doug Armstrong steps down. And at that time, just run through the roster breakdown of contracts up on Puckpedia. Weird saying, not cap friendly. The guys that are under contract, Kyrou, Thomas, Schenn, Buchnevich. Okay, there's your core 4 that are making a ton of money on the forward side. You've got Colton Parayko at that time that's got 1 more year or a couple more years left. Other than that, the contracts are off of the book. So now Jake Neighbors is going to be stepping in. It's going to be the final year of that deal before he's an RFA. Steen's got a clean slate to work with the exception of a couple of core players that I would imagine he's in the conversation with Doug Armstrong when those extensions were given out. This just sets the team up for success, and I think it's perfect to have a clean slate for a new GM to mold it to the direction that he feels fit when they're ready to start competing.
I think it's a smart move. I think everybody is in favor of them getting something like this done with Jake Neighbors right now. And you brought up the Jaden Schwartz deal. That was 2 years, $2.5 million per year, but that was in 2014. That was 10 years ago. Yeah. Money has changed quite a lot since then. So to be able to get this at this price, it's basically taking into account inflation in the NHL. The cap has increased by a ton since then, so you expect guys to make a little bit more money. This is the same thing they did with Thomas and Kyrou as well. 21-22, those guys both got identical contracts, much like they have right now. 2 years, $5.5 million in total, so they ended up getting that bridge deal. And then after that, they proved their worth. Doug Armstrong said, okay, let's go ahead and get a long-term deal done here. Gave them both the matching 8-year contracts in the same offseason, and now we know where we're at with them. I'll be interested to see what this means for Jake Neighbors. So far this year, he's been off to a slower start, although not a bad start by any stretch of the imagination. He's been put into a top 6 role once again. So far, 3 points, couple of goals for him. If he has another 25-goal season, I would not be surprised at all if Army/Steen come to the table next offseason and say, all right, let's get this done.
Yeah.
Yes, we already have 1 year of your contract in place. Let's extend beyond that. Let's get a 6-year contract in place. Keep you here for the long haul. You're going to be a part of the core. And if it does go in the other direction, if for whatever reason he settles in more as a 15 to 20 goal scorer and he's a third line player long term instead of a top 6 player, which is in the range of outcomes at least, cool. You've got a guy that's already locked up for cost certainty over the next couple of years, and now instead of that massive $7 million+ deal, maybe it's closer to the Jaden Schwartz deal. You do like a 5 years, $30 million contract, and it's in that vein. This is a smart way to keep him in place for right now, reward him for what he did for you a year ago, keep him wanting more. Yeah. Not that that was going to be a problem for a guy like Jake Neighbors. Everybody benefits from a deal like this.
You're also kind of passing the torch, which seems odd to say because they're in the midst of this rebuild or retool, however you're framing it. But by the time that Jake Neighbors becomes that RFA after this 3.75 extension, Kyrou's going to be sitting at 30 years old. Robert Thomas is 29 years old. Jake Neighbors is going to be 25 years old. Broberg, 26. You've got Dylan Holloway's 26. But you're also going to have the implementing Dvorsky and Snuggerud in there, who are going to be on entry-level contracts. So you're bringing in the next wave of complementary pieces while Jake Neighbors is solidifying himself as a top 6 winger, and you've already got some of your top players in the core place. So this is how Edmonton should have operated this past offseason with Broberg and Holloway. You should have locked these guys up prior to the RFA status in the offseason because they're your core. And you could say whatever you want. Doug Armstrong's not scared of anything. There's partly a reason why Jake Neighbors got this contract extension before he potentially goes and has another great season.
But that's good management.
It's real. It's smart.
You know who a guy is. You have an idea of what he's going to be for you long term, and you avoid the worst case scenario with this. You avoid the potential of an offer sheet. If Jake Neighbors goes on another crazy pace, and by the end of the season he is more in line with what Alex has said prior to the year, is 30+ goals. So you have back-to-back seasons with 25+ goals, a guy that plays the way that everybody is looking for right now. They need somebody that can go stand in front of the net. Those guys are rare. He's 22 years old. Maybe then you would have a team that comes in and says, you know what? We're in the same position that the Blues were last year. We're willing to risk a second-round pick to be able to sign him to an offer sheet. And then you're screwed, and you're trying to figure out, okay, what do we do here? Do we match? Because instead of having that problem, now you just avoid it entirely. Or at a minimum, push it off another season. Give yourself a little bit more time, and then you can deal with this in 2026.
Yeah, well, and let's go down the path hypothetically that we talked on Friday. If this team contends and there's a blatant hole on their roster and they want to go out there and be aggressive that they can build this team up a little bit more, now you don't have to worry about the Jake Neighbors like, yeah, but if we bring this guy in and then what happens with their cap in the offseason, you've got all of the business with the exception of a couple of fourth-line players done before the offseason begins.
So can I bring up one other, though? 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Somebody from the 636 said, guys, I think, to me, Joel Hofer needs to be next. He is also an RFA after this season. He's making $775,000 right now. Next year, he is an RFA. He's 24 years old. He's been really good since the start of last season as the number 2 goalie. Alex, would you be in favor of going to the table with Joel Hofer in the near future?
I'd be in favor of it, yes. I mean, I don't think it's necessary because he's not going to get paid, and it's not going to be in the sense of somebody goes in there. I mean, maybe somebody offers him $5 or $6 million, but if you're the Blues, you're not going to do that anyway. You're probably going to look at him and say, we're going to give you 2 or 3 years because he's in line. The same with Binnington. Binnington's an RFA after the next 2 seasons, I believe.
After 2 years,
yeah. So his timeline is up. So your RFA conversation, you can go to him and see if he wants to. Joel Hofer is, hey, you'll be the number 1 guy in a few years. It's just right now, Binnington's the guy. There's probably a team that goes in there and throws money at him if he hits that RFA status.
Right, and that's why you would do it.
Sure. But if I'm the Blues, I don't know.
I want to get it done as soon as I could.
Maybe.
But if I'm Hofer,
I'm not doing it. Yeah, I'm not going to come. I'm going to go to arbitration and see what happens. Because if let's say, knock on a lot of wood right now, let's say Binnington gets hurt. If I'm Joel Hofer, I'm not negotiating something unless I want to be here long term.
Hofer's a really confident dude. You can see that by the way that he carries himself. And he should be. He's a good goalie. He's already proven himself to be more than capable at the NHL level. I'm waiting if I'm Hofer. I want to put together another really strong season and use that as my, not walk year, but my platform year. Be able to negotiate off of not just 1, but 2 seasons of really strong backup goaltending play as a 24-year-old goalie in the NHL. if I'm the Blues, I would absolutely want to go to the table with him right now and negotiate one of these bridge deals because I think it's just smart business. It takes you up basically to the end of that Jordan Binnington contract, and it allows you to then determine, all right, what's our course of action here? What do we decide to do then? But if I'm Hofer, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
So should the Blues do that? Sure. But it takes two to tango. Neighbors was clearly receptive to the idea of this bridge deal. I'm not, I don't know for sure one way or the other, but if I was in Hofer's shoes, I would not be receptive to that right now. This offseason, maybe you talk about it. Right now, I would not.
Yeah, I'm probably in the same line of thinking. If I'm the Blues, you approach him with it, but you're Joel Hofer, I'm going to let this thing play itself out because arbitration is going to benefit a goaltender. But I do know Joel Hofer loves St. Louis, and he likes working with Jordan Binnington. If the plan is in place for you to be a number one goaltender, and let's say you do get a $3 million bump over the next 2 years, and then after that, it's like, hey, you might be talking $7 or $8 million. It could happen, but I don't know if I'm Joel Hofer. I even want to take a chance with that.
He's Alex Ferrario. That is Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. Good to have the three of us in studio once again. Doesn't happen often, but
I was here yesterday.
It's good to be here with the guys. T-Bone's wearing his Illini shirt today. Congratulations to your boys. Huge win. Huge win with T-Bone in attendance on Saturday. Tanner's getting his microphone fixed right now. Otherwise, he would be on there talking to you guys about how happy he is. He would be talking a bunch of trash.
Time to join the family, boys.
About
It's not how you spell family, man.
Missouri
fits my MO.
is now behind the Illini in the rankings as if the AP poll really matters at this point in the season.
They're going to be behind in basketball, too.
There he is. They don't matter when my team's bad.
That's fine. I will concede that argument before the season
And in
begins.
baseball. Boy, Mizzou sucks at everything. It's great.
You don't care about Illini baseball at all.
I just want them to be better than Mizzou.
Okay, sure. T-Bone texted us
Are you
in the middle
still
of
enjoying from Saturday?
Tanner was hammered on Saturday, dude.
Oh my God, everything was in all caps.
I have no idea how you could possibly remember anything that happened during that game. We got ridiculous text all day long. Ridiculous. Just from start to finish, just absurd text.
Every text was in all caps. I felt like I was being yelled at nonstop by Tanner.
Because I was yelling.
And then the next day, he just goes radio silent.
I wonder why.
We didn't hear from him until Monday at like 7 o'clock at night.
He had a detox all day long on Sunday. He was driving. He had 7 different pit stops. I think he forgot to pay for gas again and then had to turn around.
Yeah, bought a shirt that was misspelled. Come on, man.
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. All right, coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we'll talk about the Jake Neighbor situation with Jeremy Rutherford. Also want to get his thoughts on the early season success that we've seen from Broberg. He had a really good piece over on The Athletic, breaking down some tape on Broberg. We'll talk to JR about that coming up in about 15 minutes or so. But coming up next, the Cardinals also made some news. What can we learn from 2 hires that they are planning to make? We'll tell you next here on 101 ESPN.
teams have beefed up and gotten more analytical. I think we were pretty much at the forefront a number of years ago and stayed there and, went along and kept improving. But, the industry, I think, saw the value of going all in on player procurement, player development, and, we were doing fine. We didn't really quite catch up.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK, that was Bill DeWitt Jr. on the postseason press conference explaining why the Cardinals are going all in on player development. Well, we got the first real significant hire as a part of this all-in status for the Cardinals earlier today. Katie Wu of The Athletic reported this over at The Athletic. You can read her full piece over there. The Cardinals are set to hire Guardians Rob, and I apologize, I do not know how to pronounce his last name, but it's Cerfolio, I believe is how you pronounce this. Cerfolio is how you spell it. Rob Cerfolio, that's what we'll go with here, is going to be overseeing the Cardinals minor league system moving forward. We don't know the exact role that this is going to be, but it's some kind of like GM, assistant GM title is what he's expected to have in the Cardinal system. He was with the Guardians, Alex, and he was effectively overseeing their minor league system in recent years. We don't know a ton about the guy. He's very young. He's like 34 years old. He went to Yale, so I would imagine he's a pretty bright dude.
BK's excited.
A familiar background from Chaim Bloom. These are the kinds of hires that I figured we would probably see more of with Chaim Bloom in charge of the Cardinals organization. That being said, if there is something that I would want to see in the background of a player that the Cardinals were going to hire for a role like this, it is somebody that is coming from this kind of a system, coming from an organization that is known for player development the way that the Guardians are. The other thing that this is, Alex, it is a slight step up for Cerfolio in terms of his profile, his title, and I would imagine he's getting a little bit of a bump in pay. That is something that we have not seen a ton of from the Cardinals. One thing that you don't have to do when you continue to promote from within is give guys a bump relative to industry standards. So this is a pretty sizable investment, I would imagine, for the Cardinals in terms of what they're adding to that side of things. What do you make of this? What was your biggest takeaway when you saw this move hire, this hire announced just earlier today?
I liked it because it was coming from a team like the Cleveland Guardians. It's coming from a team that has had a lot of success in the past of identifying talent in their system and developing it properly and fast-tracking it to the major leagues. And even so, when they get to the major leagues, you see it impact their roster. And I think more than anything, when you're looking at the Cleveland Guardians roster, the first thing you divert your eyes to is the pitching staff, the development of their pitchers.
Absolutely.
They always find these guys that not just become reliable arms, but top of the rotation arms, like whether you're going through Shane Bieber or you're talking about some of the guys that they've had this season. So I liked this move because you went to a team that has had success in terms of identifying young talent and finding them. They're finding the path to the major leagues, but also having success and sustained success at the major leagues.
Yeah, it's an interesting hire because, I mean, you mentioned Cleveland's been pretty good at developing pitching over the years, and also they do a good job of what the Cardinals have been good at, which is they develop a lot of complementary pieces for their roster. You know, they have developed the superstar, not when he was running player development, like they developed Jose Ramirez. But since then, though, they've been able to supplement their roster with pieces from inside the organization, whether that be the pitching side or the position player side. It's an intriguing hire. Now, I'm excited to see it's someone that he's going to bring in that is from, I mean, there was no other option, but to go from outside the organization, go somewhere where it is a smaller market like Cleveland, where they have to rely on this player development side to really supplement their roster, and he seems to have done a good job at that. So it's an interesting hire by Chaim Bloom, and I really like it because that's the kind of hire that I was hoping that they would make, was someone that came from a smaller organization that would be able to kind of help you grow this player development, oversee it, and especially on the pitching side.
Do you guys like that? I would imagine here. Now, he did play baseball. He played baseball at Yale.
Even better. Yeah, I thought maybe he was just a nerd.
He's a nerd, but with an education.
I didn't say that he's not.
Yeah.
I said that he did
at least
play
he picked
baseball
up a bat.
at one point.
Or a glove, one or the other.
How do you think Cardinals fans will react to, and this is over, I'm talking the next 3 to 5 years, the way that the Cardinals are going to be selling what they're doing in the minor league system. Because I would imagine there's going to be a lot of nerdy numbers, expected batting average, expected slugging percentage, stuff like swing speed will be utilized. You'll see a lot of technology that is incorporated. They're going to talk about a lot of these kinds of things. And this is another, and I say this affectionately as one myself, another nerd that is added to the mix for the St. Louis Cardinals. Do you think fans are okay with that? Do you think fans are going to be good with that as long as it still produces the types of players that they're looking for?
That's the key. On the surface, when you say it's another nerd that's going to use a lot of numbers, people are like, you got to be kidding me. But if you come through and actually showcase what those nerdy numbers are doing in terms of identifying the proper players, nobody cares. Nobody cares if you're basing this all off of advanced analytics, as long as you're getting the receipts for it. And like, I'm just looking through some of their roster players this season, like David Fry. He's an all-star this season for the Cleveland Guardians. This was a player that was identified from the Milwaukee Brewers minor league system that they acquired. Stephen Kwan, another player that rised through the rankings in the Cleveland Guardians system. If you're going to use these nerdy numbers and develop these players, all for it.
It's interesting. I just don't know what his role was prior to becoming the director of essentially player development with the Guardians. He had a bunch of different roles within the organization. So we don't know exactly what his background is, how much he influenced some of the players that you're referencing, Alex. We're like, I would love to give him a bunch of credit for the pitchers that they have been able to develop through their system. I would love to give him credit for Tanner Bybee. I don't know how much credit I should give for that, but I would love to give it to him. Hell, I would love to give him credit if we can, for developing the pitchers that they had like 3 or 5 years ago, because they had a ton of them. Like, think about the starting rotation that the Guardians have had in recent seasons. It's weird because Shane Bieber was a big part of that, right? They went from a team that was molded of, we exclusively have starting pitching. We have nothing else. We don't have the position players. At times we have a good back end of the bullpen, but sometimes it's an adventure to get there. To this year, we have no starting pitching other than one guy. And we've got a really good offense and an unbelievable bullpen, and that's going to be enough to get us to the ALCS. They've had some of those gaps the way that the Cardinals have in recent seasons. So if the Cardinals can continue developing position players the way that they have, I know people don't want to hear that, but they've done a pretty good job relative to industry standards in recent seasons, and this guy can incorporate a lot of the standards of the pitching development that they have in Cleveland, I think that'd be a win. That's really what I'm looking for here is, can he fix what they have been doing on the pitching side of things? I think it improved this past season. I think we saw some of that with what they were able to develop within the system. Now it is, can he take that a step further? And can you help to identify the players in other systems, which you were talking about, Alex Fry, for example, do that on the pitching side of things as well.
Which has been an ultimate failure for the Cardinals.
Go get those guys, get them into your system, maximize what they have to bring to the table, and then continue developing them up to the big league level. Those are the kinds of things that they've been missing on in recent years. It's time to get back to that.
Yeah, and now that he's kind of taken the reins, he's kind of the guy that develops. I mean, you mentioned kind of a gap. You look at the Cardinals now, their farm system is very top-heavy. And what I mean by that is, like, most of the pitching prospects are basically at AAA now. Like, Quinn Matthews will probably start next year at AAA. Tink Hens will get close to AAA by next year. You look in the lower levels of their minor leagues, and they've got, like, 2 top prospects, and that's Chase Davis and J.J. Weatherholt. Outside of that, though, it's very much a top-heavy minor league system. So he's going to have his hands full for bringing in those guys and trying to develop them through the lower levels of the minor leagues and see how fast they can push those guys forward. But to your first question of, like, will people like the nerdy number stuff? No. I mean, Alec Burleson was this guy that was sold, right? Why did the Cardinals keep him as a top prospect in the minor leagues, and then kind of what they said this offseason about him? And look, they were right. He ended up being a very good player for him this year, but it was, if you look at his expected batting average, you look at the barrel percentage, you look at, like, the average exit velo, it tells you this is working. But you could look at the back of his baseball card and go, well, wait a minute, I don't understand. This is why we should be moving on from him and be willing to trade him. And that was what Chaim Bloom is, everybody we've talked to from Boston that we've had on the show says, hey, that's what he kind of got stuck on trying to sell fans, and it ended up going south for the fan base. The fan base ends up turning on him. I wouldn't be shocked if that's the exact same thing that happens here in St. Louis.
All right, on the other side, there are other hires. John Jay is one. We're hoping to have John Jay on the show at some point later this week. He's going to be taking over. They haven't, from what I've seen, announced an official role for him, but he is taking over for Willie McGee, which essentially means he's going to be in charge of the outfield. I'm guessing maybe there's some base running stuff that'll be added to his play, those kinds of things, but that'll be worked out.
Maybe offensive coordinator.
Well, I
didn't know that was the thing until I found out about the potential next hire.
So the other big hire that they made, and I'm not trying to minimize the hire of John Jay. I think everybody's in favor of that. Seems like a good hire. Willie McGee going to go back to more of an advisory role. I don't think anybody's going to be down about that. There's not really a take to be had there. Brant Brown is a little different. So Brant Brown is now expected to be the Cardinals' next hitting coach, according to John Denton of Cardinals.com. Brant Brown, for those not familiar with his background, has coached with the Dodgers, the Marlins, and the Mariners. He spent most of his career in the Dodgers system. He was their hitting analyst, instructor, whatever. He's like one of their, they have 100 different coaches on their staff.
Just nerdy getting nerdier.
And then he was hired away by the Marlins. Skip Schumacher added him to their coaching staff. He became an instructor for them on the offensive side of things. And then this past offseason, he was the bench coach / offensive coordinator for the Seattle Mariners for roughly 2 months.
Oh.
And then they fired him.
Oh, good.
Under him,
Good.
the Mariners hit .222 with an OPS plus of 95, which means offensively, they were 5% below league average. It's not what you want. He was fired almost immediately.
Why? Why, BK?
I don't want to make too much of this, but it's not ideal for a background for a guy that you're bringing in as the next hitting coach, for him to have been fired within 2 months of a very significant promotion. I would imagine a decent bump in pay from his last job. Here's what Mitch Haniger had to say about him. Quote, very intelligent. He really understood the importance of game planning and understood the importance of swing mechanics. For me, it was a pleasure to work with him because he understood all the different aspects of hitting, what can go into it, and he could really relate to the guys when they're struggling, having been in the box before and having played at the big league level. Some of the things as a player are way above your head, so that stuff we try not to focus on, but it affects us, and unfortunately, our collective production offensively kind of led to this decision. All of us don't feel great about it, and Brownie's not the only one to blame for that. It's not his fault. We really enjoyed working with him. Very professional, a legitimately great hitting coach. Sounds like the players liked him. What do you guys make of this? What do you think of the hire if and when it is announced again? This is according to John Denton. He's expected to be named the next hitting coach for the St. Louis Cardinals.
I don't know how to feel about this because we've interviewed multiple former hitting coaches, and I've always asked the question, how much impact does a hitting coach actually have? And every one of them that we've interviewed say, well, it kind of depends on the player if they're receptive to it, but really all we are is we're just kind of a motivational speaker for them. It's hard to sit there and look on paper and say this is a terrible hire by the Cardinals until I see if it actually works out. Because at the time, I don't think anybody was really on board with Jeff Albert. And then throughout the early portion of it, it was like, this isn't working. And then when he left, it's like, wait a minute, we want Jeff Albert back.
I miss Jeff.
So yes, it doesn't look good that you were fired after being hired as the offensive coordinator, whatever you want to call it, when the offense was one of the worst in Major League Baseball. On paper, as a Cardinals fan, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is what you're doing? But I can't judge it until I actually see if it pays off with your team. So I'm fine with it now, which is not a great sports take. At least it's seemingly, you hope, Chaim Bloom that's making that decision.
If I'm being honest, I think it's kind of a disappointing hire. Because I would think you would want to hire someone or bring someone in that you could at least point to something on their resume.
But who would that have been?
I don't know. And like that's why it's a little tough to have.
Chaim Bloom.
Yeah, and that's why it's a little tough to say. It feels disappointing, but it feels disappointing because you need something to look back on a guy that you hire as a hitting coach and say, okay, this is what we can circle as, hey, this is why we believe in him. Him being fired 2 months into his tenure with Seattle, isn't that impressive? Mitch Haniger, that's a nice quote from him. He was 16% below league average this year, offensively. So it's not like I can look at him and say, oh, well, he was 10% above league average. Maybe that's a player that he connected with. Okay, maybe that made it work. It's not inspiring. I wanted to see something that I could look at his resume and go, oh, okay, when he was with this organization, they had a great minor league development in hitting, or their offense was good.
Though. The Dodgers is his piece of his resume that I am really interested in.
But he wasn't solely responsible with the Dodgers.
The problem for him is that now he's gotten a big league experience, and that big league experience was not good. I was talking more of like
I also
just
have a really
at.
tough time though looking at his his experiences with the Marlins and the Mariners, two teams notoriously not exactly known for their offense, and saying, okay, he's a failure. I don't know if he's going to be a failure here or not. I know that he failed with those two organizations and with what they had to offer offensively. I think that the Mariners freaked out. I think they overreacted to what they were early on in the season. I think they were probably going to bounce back a bit, and they ultimately did, but they hit 225 after he was fired. They hit 222 while he was there. They ended up with a 380 slugging percentage after he was fired and a 365 slugging percentage before he was fired. So it's not like they went on this tear after he was let go.
They were bad before and after he was there.
They were just a bad offense, and the Miami Marlins, just a bad offense, man. Like, they didn't have the talents to be particularly good. So I don't know that I want to overly judge Brant Brown for his inability to get guys to buy into his hitting philosophy for what happened in Miami and Seattle.
They just announced it with Brant Brown, too,
It's
by
official?
the way. Yeah, it's
Okay.
official. He's named the hitting coach with the Cardinals.
So I would look for me more at what he did with the Dodgers, not because it's a positive, but because I find it to be interesting. He was a hitting strategist with them. That is a very modern hitting approach. You see what they did in the last series against the New York Mets, where they were taking all of their walks and then putting the ball in play when they had runners in scoring position. If that's what he brings to the Cardinals, I think they're going to be really happy with that. It's just a matter of, can the Cardinals hitters execute on the plan that's put in place?
I don't think any takeaways are going to be able to be had until after you start to see some of this into fruition with them.
Yeah, for sure. All right, he's Alex Ferrario. That's Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, Jeremy Rutherford, Blues insider for The Athletic, here on 101 ESPN.
I'm excited for this weekend because my wife and I already planned out what we're going to do. We've got to go pick pumpkins still. I know we're late into the season, but we're going to do that, and then we're going to head down to Ted Drew's, and we're going to take the girls there. We typically go on Friday, but we're going to do it over the weekend, but we always make sure we make it a point to go to Ted Drew's with our family at some point during the weekend. Why? Because it's been a family tradition for the Ferrarios, at least since I was a little kid. Always going down there, sitting in the back of the minivan, spending time with the family, just talking, catching up, and now we get to do that with our daughters. And you need to take advantage of this as well and build traditions for you and your family or you and your friends getting out to the famous destination off of Chippewa. It's been around since 1929, 95 years. 4 generations of families have been serving St. Louisans that famous frozen custard. And you can go down there, make whatever mixture you want, concrete sundae, or you can use the mixtures that they've put together, like the Great Pumpkin, which is seasonal, so you need to get this sooner rather than later. But it's a slice of pumpkin pie. It's mixed with Ted's delicious vanilla custard and topped with whipped cream. While you're down there, make sure you walk across the parking lot off of Chippewa and check out the Ted Drew's gift shop, where you can buy Ted Drew's apparel, you can buy Ted Drew's souvenirs, you could buy Ted Drew's gift cards, which is the perfect gift when you have that person that you never know what to buy them. What better way to say I love you than with some frozen custard? Go check them out off of Chippewa. Ted Drew's famous frozen custard. It really is good, guys and gals.
Tanner Hendrickson here at the Sports Center update, driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues back in action tonight. So we'll be taking on the Winnipeg Jets. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then puck drop at 7 with Joey V and Chris Kerber. And the St. Louis Cardinals just announced that they have hired Brant Brown as their new hitting coach for the 2025 season. They've also officially announced that John Jay will be joining the coaching staff here in St. Louis. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by our friend, Jeremy Rutherford. He's the Blues insider for The Athletic. You can read his great work over there or follow him on Twitter at JP Rutherford. Jer, appreciate the time as always, man. Want to get into the news of the day, which is that Jake Neighbors has signed a 2-year contract extension for the Blues. I think I misrepresented this a little bit in our open. It starts next year and then continues. So it's 2 years beyond this season in terms of his contract extension that he signed earlier today. JR, what did you make of the news when you saw that earlier this morning?
Yeah, it's a great deal for, I think, both sides, both the Blues and Jake Neighbors. You know, here's a guy, 27 goals last year. He's definitely got 25 to 30 goal potential in this league, and he drags your team into the fight. I know we talked to Doug Armstrong this past offseason and said any talks with Jake, and he said, no, we want him to prove himself a little bit. It'd be funny, guys, if a team came out and said, yeah, he had no points the first few games, but that overtime winner, we just said, we better get this done. So I think that this prevents a lot of things. You know, if he doesn't go and score 30 goals this year, it's going to cost a lot more than $3.75 to lock him up. So he gets some security. The Blues get a good player that is going to be a big part of this future. And most importantly, I know everybody's talking about this, Edmonton can't offer cheap Jake Neighbors.
Yeah, the first text, our boss Mike Ryder walked in, and the first text we received once the news broke out was "Suck it, Edmonton." So people knew exactly what that was. But JR, how meaningful is this on the sense of you really do have a clean slate when Alexander Steen takes over, because Jake Neighbors, who will still be an RFA, you have some of your core players in place, but Steen's able to take over and really adjust this roster how he seems fit.
That's a great point, because it seems like every headline that comes out these days is about a contract that's how long? 2 years long. And that's when Doug Armstrong's going to hand things over to Alexander Steen in 2 years. But seriously, you look at the offer sheets, the Broberg and Holloway, both 2 years, and then now the Jake Neighbors deal. So, you know, I think that's probably a little bit more coincidence. But, you know, I think you can read into it that Doug Armstrong's going to hand off the ship to Alexander Steen, and he's going to be able to make some decisions. Obviously, Doug Armstrong will still be involved as the president of hockey operations, but they'll be able to make some decisions on these guys in a couple of years to see how they want to shape this thing moving forward beyond that.
Jeremy Rutherford is our guest here on 101 ESPN. JR, you wrote a piece late last week about Philip Broberg, kind of looking at some of the tape that you've seen from him. There was another one of your colleagues that had a really good piece earlier today about Broberg and Buchnevich and how they're adjusting to their new roles. What have you seen on the ice? When you dove into the nitty-gritty of what Broberg has done this year, what have you seen from him in his new role as a top 4 defenseman?
Yeah, it's interesting because when you go out to write those pieces, you set out to go back and find some video that kind of backs up your point that Philip Broberg's playing some outstanding hockey. It's kind of like fishing in a barrel, because you can go look at the video where he scored the goals or had an assist, but I literally sit back and watch game after game, period after period, and just look for outstanding plays. And when you are searching for those, what I saw were subtle little plays. And so when someone asked Drew Bannister about him, he said that he just makes subtle plays that aren't necessarily game-changing, but they're important to the play and what's going on at that time. And that's exactly what I saw. There were so many plays that I don't think they're going to pop out at you when you're watching the game or you're sitting in the stands and say, wow, that just helped the Blues win this game. But there's so many little ones that add up to the puck getting out of the zone and preventing things before they happen. That's what stuck out to me. I found a few of those clips, and they're in the story, where Philip Broberg is just making heads-up plays on just about every defensive possession that he's involved in, and they all add up to a great start for the Blues defenseman.
So Jer, I know we've seen a lot of people that say, put Broberg with Parayko. It seems to work. And I'm under that same criteria because I feel like it's something you're going to want long term. But for the now, you can't break up Broberg and Falk for how they've been performing, right?
You just can't do it. And I know it's tempting, and I know that Drew Bannister's probably thought about it. The coaching staff has probably talked about it. But I think that you can't break up a good thing right now. And then you look at how Ryan Suter's played with Colton Parayko really well. You know, who knows what's going to happen when Nick Leddy comes back. Drew Bannister saying yesterday that Leddy might take a while to get back on the ice, but when he does, he's going to be a player for us right away. Well, is it back in that top pair, or if Ryan Suter's playing the way he is, do they keep him there? But for my dollar, I'm keeping Broberg and Falk together. No goals against, 5-on-5. He's getting it done offensively too, Broberg. That pair sticks together for me.
JR is our guest here on 101 ESPN. Again, his great work is over at The Athletic. You can follow him on Twitter at JP Rutherford. JR, this is way too early to be asking this question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. We've talked about it a bit on the show because it's what we do, reacting to the day-to-day. Where do you think Philip Broberg could go down in terms of the best moves that Army has made so far?
I think it's way up there, and I felt like the potential was going to be there for this to happen. When you talk about a guy who's 6'4", 212, and can skate, and not only that, but I mentioned this in the article, when you talk to him about other parts of his game or putting up points or scoring goals, or you ask him about, hey, they're thinking about putting you on the point on the number 2 power play, what do you think? All he talks about is, well, my defensive skills. I want to make sure that I develop defensively. And that's just a great thing to hear, I think, for everybody. This guy wants to be a good defenseman, and that's what he continues to focus on. So I think those other aspects of his game, are going to be there, and it's going to make him a well-rounded player. But anytime you get a guy who's focusing on his defense, he's going to be great. So big picture, Doug Armstrong moves. I heard you guys talking about him, I think a little bit yesterday with Curbs. It's up there. It's really up there. I mean, you talk about the O'Reilly deal, the Shen deal, those types of things. I really do think we'll look back in a few years and maybe, I know it's a little early, like you said, but put this one right there at the top.
Jared, final one for me, and it seems an odd question to ask, 7 games into the regular season, but this one tonight feels pretty impactful in the sense of the last 2 seasons when the Blues started with some positive vibes of their season, Winnipeg just found a way to kill it off. And this Blues team has not found a way to beat Winnipeg in back-to-back games since 2019. Is this the team that's plaguing St. Louis?
Yeah, it is. They're a tough team to play against, and they have a lot of the same roster that's back this year. I just took a peek at Winnipeg. They're 5-0, last unbeaten team in the National Hockey League. But, 2 of those 5 wins, overtime, 4 of the 5 games were at home, and then a couple of opponents, San Jose, Chicago. So I don't think this is a team that's, just rolling in, hey, we've beaten some of the kings of the league right now, and they're just off to this great start. Playing good hockey so far, but yeah, always tough opponent for the Blues. And you're right, Alex. You look at these 2 wins that the Blues are coming off of. If they could add a win over Winnipeg to what they've been doing here lately, I think the biggest thing, though, pretty obvious, is did you play consistent throughout the whole game? The Blues, the past couple of games, you have that bad period, you come back and show you're a better team. That's great, but play more consistently throughout the 60 minutes. Show that you can be that team on a regular basis. Beat this Winnipeg team, and I think, at 5-2, if you come away with a W tonight, what a really good start for this Blues team.
All right, JR, we'll get you out of here on this just real quick. So far, Philip Broberg has a point in every game, 6 points in 6 games. If I set the over-under for him at 45 points on the season, would you take the over or the under?
Take it.
Let's see here. So you're 6 for 6 right now. We'll get to 45. Yeah, I think you got to take it. And if he gets some more power play time, which I don't know that that's going to be the case, but if he does, I think you have to take it. But, I'm gonna lean towards what Alex is saying here and take the over on the 45.
Jared, you're thinking what I'm thinking, right? 82 points?
I don't know about that.
If I set the over-under at 50, he's still going over?
I would think somewhere in that neighborhood, but the higher you climb, I just think it's going to be tough to be that. For a
65?
Hey, like Philip says, let's focus on the defense here, play D, and the points will come.
Yeah,
so I'm going to stick with the over on the 40.
I like it. Hey, JR, appreciate the time as always, man. Enjoy the game tonight. We'll be certainly reading all of your great work over on The Athletic. It was a really good breakdown on Philip Broberg. Enjoyed reading that one. We'll talk with you again next week, my friend.
Thanks, boys.
See you,
Yeah,
JR.
that's Jeremy Rutherford joining us here on 101 ESPN, as he does each and every Tuesday on BK and Ferrario. We'll talk more about Philip Broberg coming up in the 12 o'clock hour. Alex has some interesting notes about Winnipeg and what they've done to kill the will of the Blues over the last few years. We'll get into that coming up in the 12 o'clock hour as well. But next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers here on 101 ESPN. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. If you guys have any questions, get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line. YouTube.com/101 ESPN STL is where you can go for the YouTube chat as well. We got this from the 314, and no joke, Alex, I think we got a dozen different versions of this question, so I'll just ask this one, and it can stand for all of them. From the 314. Guys, with the hiring of John Jay and Brant Brown, is it inevitable that Skip Schumacher is going to be named as the next manager of the St. Louis Cardinals?
I don't know if inevitable is the right word, but it sure seems like it's going to be happening. If I'm putting my tinfoil hat on, it sure seems like it's going to be a real possibility at some point. Skip Schumacher's potential landing spots are both in the World Series, so I don't think those are going to be available for him. Didn't take the Cincinnati Reds job. I could see Skip Schumacher just sitting around being like, yeah, I'll be an advisor to the general manager for a year and then see what happens.
Yeah, that feels about right. Yeah, I could totally see him signing on to be an advisor for a year. Advisor to the coaching staff, maybe, and / general manager. I could see where Skip finds his way back in St. Louis.
You can't demote Descalso, right?
No.
Why not? They did it to Stubby Clapp.
And Michael Gersh.
Yeah.
I wonder
Gersh got the worst of it.
Yeah, Gersh got special projects.
Yeah.
I know they're investing more in their development right now. I don't know if you would consider a position on the major league staff to be in development. I would personally, considering how many young players they have. Just have him as like the associate manager.
Do you have him like the farm director?
No. I'm saying on the bench, like in basically the same capacity that he was the last time that he was here.
Okay, but that's
just add another role to the staff, because this is what teams like the Dodgers are doing right now, where they're just having these random weird names. The Rangers have done this, honestly. They have an offensive coordinator.
Okay, but what you just said is the manager in waiting, and so just hire Skip for that.
I don't know if I consider that to be the case. I think that this would just be a way for him to stay involved in baseball in an organization that he knows really well. He has a good relationship with Ollie. Obviously, he has a good relationship with the new hitting coach and the new outfield instructor, whatever his role is going to be. He's tight with Descalso. He's tight with Ollie. He knows all of these guys. He's close with all of them. So I do wonder if there is a position for Skip back on the staff here in St. Louis. I don't know if that's the case or not. Maybe he just wants to take a year off. It's like, I'm just going to hang out with my family. I've got my money. I'll wait for the next job.
I'm going to wait for the job that I want. And the job that I probably wanted was either the Dodgers or the Yankees. Another job might be the Cardinals.
It's possible. But another way to get that job would be to have a relationship with Chaim Bloom. And the best way to have a relationship with Chaim Bloom would be to be here with Chaim Bloom.
Unless he's already playing with those marionettes right now, and it's just like, oh.
I do find it interesting. I think he would be a good addition to the staff. I would hire him back if I'm in Ollie Marble's shoes, but I don't know how that works. I don't know what their budget is for stuff like that. And I don't know if Skip would be interested either.
I've always thought we should operate like the Marlins, you know? Bring in the whole Marlins.
Which era?
staff.
Last year or the 2 years ago?
Well, whichever one you want.
2 years ago was fun.
Yeah. Well, we don't have that kind of pitching, so I guess last year's version.
Well, we had that type of pitching, but they traded it away.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 636. Guys, after the first 2 or 3 games, Jordan Kyrou has basically done nothing. 0 goals in his last 5, a -2 in that stretch, 0 points in his last 3 games. Is this same old, same old? I'm afraid it is.
I hate to be the one that was right. Oh, boy, that sounded BK-ish. Sorry, everybody.
You don't hate that at all. I wouldn't either.
This change happened.
I was right, but I'm not.
This change happened the moment they put Kyrou back with Robert Thomas. The Minnesota Wild game, they went with Kyrou Thomas, and I think it was Brandon Saad that was playing together. You had 6 points in 3 games playing with Pavel Buchnevich. Now, he's shooting more now, but he's not scoring. Thomas and Kyrou just don't mesh the same way that it's odd to say that Kyrou and Buchnevich were meshing together. But now you find another recipe where Neighbors and Buchnevich have been working. Neighbors has gotten points in 2 straight games. Pavel Buchnevich has not been on the ice yet for a goal against at even strength. I don't know what to tell you. It's really right now, do you want Robert Thomas going or do you want Pavel Buchnevich going? And it's a little concerning that that combination is not working right now.
And be honest, it doesn't surprise me. Jordan Kyrou's the Nolan Gorman of this team. He's gonna go through streaks where he just does not score. And you mentioned he's shooting the puck still. He's gonna go through like 10, 15 game stretch where he just puts up a handful of goals, and then he's gonna have a 15 game stretch later on in the year where he ends up scoring like 17 in 15 games.
Bingo.
That's just Jordan Kyrou. That's what
That's
he's been
goal
his career.
scorers.
Exactly.
That's what almost there are exceptions to this rule, but you can go through most goal scorers in the NHL and you'll find stretches of 5 to 7 games where they just disappear. And the reason why is because their value is what they do as goal scorers. And it's really hard to score goals consistently in the NHL.
It's not scoring goals, though, for me. It's being a part of the offense. And you can't go silent for 3 games and be a -2 in those 3 games.
I mean, but every player in the league has that, man. Every single one of them.
I get it, but where else are you contributing if you're Jordan Kyrou?
Yeah.
And a $5 million player can do that. Not an $8 million player.
See, I like we could go through this, and we don't have the time to do it right now, but we could go through all of the $8 million players in the league. I bet you all of them have a stretch like this. It's 3 games, man. And if we're going to be this critical of Jordan Kyrou every time that he goes through a 3-game stretch where he's not contributing to the offense, because it's going to happen. This is not going to be the only one this year. There's going to be longer stretches of time where he disappears. We're going to be really disappointed with the Jordan Kyrou experience, and there's just going to be no way for him to get away from that. So,
unfortunately, I think that's what happened when they put that $8 million on him. People were going to be upset with it.
I think that's a bigger question than just Kyrou, though. That gets back to this style of player.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm not saying
any goal scorer that you get that is kind of similar to this, that is a true, like, that is their value, is their speed, their skating, and their goal scoring ability. We're going to be disappointed by all of them. Like, you're going to be disappointed by Jimmy Snuggerud if you're disappointed by this version of Jordan Kyrou.
This shouldn't take Robert Thomas off of the hook. Like, I want this to be very clear. I'm not just picking on Jordan Kyrou in this sense. I mean, Thomas hasn't been the same player since the first couple of games. He's been on the ice for 8 goals against in total right now. But my issue with that is, I mean, Robert Thomas has got to find the chemistry with other players, and it can't just be he only works with so-and-so guy. That number 1 centers can find it work with other players. But it's just really odd where you at least saw him contributing in the first couple of games, but then these last 3, it's been Robert Thomas has been getting scored on, and there's been lack of offense from that line too.
Yep. He's Alex Steen on BK. We'll talk more Blues coming up at the 12 o'clock hour, including Alex has some interesting notes on what Winnipeg has done to the Blues over the last couple of seasons and how they've really been the beginning of the end of each of those last couple of years. We'll get into that coming up in just a little bit. Coming up next, this is the best World Series matchup since blank. What is your answer to that? And I'm taking the Cardinals off the table. So you can't have 2013, can't have 2006. The 2011 either. This is the best World Series matchup we've seen since blank. We'll fill in that blank for you next year on 101 ESPN. Removing the Cardinals from the equation, because obviously here in St. Louis, every World Series that includes the Cardinals is the best World Series that you could watch as a fan. But removing them from the equation, Alex, this is the best World Series matchup since blank. Let's fill in the blank over the course of this segment. Let me add in some of the context that makes this, to me at least, such an intriguing matchup. The Dodgers and Yankees both had the best records in their respective leagues this season. It's the fourth time that this has happened in the wild card era that we have seen the two teams that had the best records in their respective leagues meeting in the World Series. 4 times. It's the first time in a non-COVID season since the Cardinals played against the Red Sox in 2013. Before that, you have to go back to 1999 when the Yankees took on the Atlanta Braves, and that was one of the best eras, in my opinion, for Major League Baseball. The American League and National League MVPs, most likely, we have not seen that announced yet, but most likely are going to be going up against each other head-to-head with Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani in this series. Last time that happened in a World Series was 2012. There are 5 MVPs, current or former, that are expected to play in this series. It's the first time that has ever happened in a World Series in Major League Baseball history. The last time that a World Series included 4 players that had won an MVP in their career was 1971. So it's been 50 years since we've seen even 4 matchup. 4 of the top 7 players in jersey sales in Major League Baseball are participating in this series: Ohtani, Judge, Betts, and Soto. So if you're looking for popularity, guys that fans, just casual fans, are interested in, they're involved in this. If you're looking for greatness, well, 5 guys in the series have won an MVP. You've got a couple of former Rookies of the Year. You've got a couple of former Cy Young Award winners. You've got the 2 best records in the league. You've got the 2 biggest markets in the league. You can't ask for a whole lot more in terms of storylines. Oh, and by the way, there are 2 managers that are performing in this that were both on the hot seat heading into this season had they not reached this point in the season. So, for all of those reasons and so many others, this is about as intriguing of a matchup as you could possibly get in the World Series. So, Alex, for you, I will ask the question once again. This is the best World Series matchup for you since blank.
2018. Dodgers and Red Sox, because you had 2 teams that were the first place teams in their respective divisions, where you had a 108-win team, the Boston Red Sox, and then the Dodgers were a 92-win, but they were first in the NL West. But here's why that was the most intriguing to me. You had one of the best players in the game at the time, Mookie Betts, who was just dominant that season for the Boston Red Sox. And on the pitching side of things for the Dodgers, you couldn't have asked for a better rotation going up against them. Now, the Red Sox still had Rick Porcello. They had Edward Rodriguez. They had Chris Sale. But you were talking about Clayton Kershaw, who was in his prime right there. Not prime, but 30 years old. He was pitching like a Cy Young winner. Walker Buehler, the young and up-and-coming kid who was at a 2.6 ERA. Both bullpens were locked down. That, to me, was the last time, taking the Cardinals out of it, I was excited for the start of a World Series.
I think the first time, this is the best matchup since, I believe, that 2016 World Series. Yeah. Cubs and at the time, the Cleveland Indians. Because, I mean, you just had the storylines to go with. I mean, the Cubs trying to end their 100-plus year championship drought. You had Cleveland, which at that point still was waiting to end their 52-year championship drought, which I think ended up getting ended later on that year when the Cavs end up winning the finals with LeBron James. But you had just star power there. Now, Cleveland didn't have guys that ended up really finishing as high up in their awards as I was thinking. But, like, you look at their rotation, you had Corey Kluber, who was leading the charge for them. You look at their lineup, you had Mike Napoli, who was playing well. You had Francisco Lindor, Jose Ramirez, Carlos Santana had a great season. Jason Kippens was also in playing pretty well at that time as well. And then we all know about the Cubs. I mean, they had John Lester, Kyle Hendricks, who finished top 3 in Cy Young voting. Chris Bryant ends up winning the MVP that season. And at the time, we thought it was the making of their dynasty. I mean, you had Anthony Rizzo, Javier Baez a part of that team. Like, that Cubs team was loaded that season. I think that's probably the best this is probably the best World Series since then. But that World Series wasn't so much built around the stars as I think this one is. It had stars in it, don't get me wrong. But that one was more just because of the storyline of, hey, there's going to be a championship drought that ends. It's just a matter of who's going to come out on top. And, of course, ended up being the Cubs.
Man, I think we're going back to the same era. So you can go even further than any of these 3 matchups that we all mentioned. You could go back probably to, like, the 90s, the 80s if you wanted to. This is that good. If you really wanted to go back further, you could. I think 2016 to 2018 was about as good as you're going to get in terms of a 3-year run for the World Series matchups. T-Bone just brought up the Guardians versus the Cubs back in 2016. The Cubs finally getting over the top. Not only was it a really compelling series because of the Cubs storylines, it also ended up being a great series. Like the two teams going up head-to-head produced really compelling individual games. Alex brought up the Red Sox versus the Dodgers in 2018, which was a ton of fun as well. Big names, a lot of star power. I would go to the Astros versus the Dodgers in 2017. That 3-year stretch to me was amazing. That 2017 Astros team traded for Justin Verlander at the deadline. They still had, at that point, some real stars at the beginning of their careers. Jose Altuve was in his prime. Carlos Correa at the beginning. Alex Bregman at the beginning. George Springer really starting to come on as a star. And Carlos Beltran, who was a cheater, but, you know, I was gonna say, he ended up being a really good player for them as well. So they had a lot of dudes that knew their names, and then this was really the beginning of the rise of the Dodgers. So you saw two teams at the beginning of what ended up being a real sustained period of success for both of them. So that, to me, would be the one that I would point back to. I will be curious to see if, much like this era that we're talking about, where it was 2016, 17, 18, 3 years where it was two of the best teams that faced each other off head-to-head in the World Series every year, I wonder if this is the start of that. Is this the start of something, or is it a one-off? Because recently, we've seen a lot of the lesser than, if you want to call them that, teams in the National League get to the World Series. 6 seeds. Teams that came in as a wild card team. Teams that were huge shocks to all of us. The Nationals, the Braves, the Phillies, and now the Diamondbacks. Now we're back to the Dodgers being the representative in the NL in the World Series. How do you feel about that, T-Bone? Is this the start of something where we're going to get back to the big payrolls, star-laden teams? They're going to be representing the respective leagues in the World Series every year, or so a one-off, and we'll get back to, hey, the postseason's a crapshoot. Weird stuff happens. This just happened to be the 1 year where it all kind of came together for the top teams.
I think this might be the beginning of something because I look at like the LA Dodgers, for example. Do we really think they're not going to spend money when they get to free agency this year, win the World Series or not? Like, I wouldn't be shocked if Willie Adames is their starting shortstop going into next year. I wouldn't be shocked if they're a team that says, hey, we'll take Sonny Gray from the Cardinals. Like, they're just going to continue to build that Death Star up. This is probably I think we're looking at, and I think there's a chance in, like, say 5 years, let's say the Dodgers win this World Series, we'll look back on this team and go, that's the thinnest team they had out of that run.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that you're going to see this kind of be, I don't know if I'd call it a trend, but I do think this isn't a one-off. I think you're going to start to see these big payroll teams kind of start to separate themselves, especially because now they can really take advantage of teams that are kind of in the middle. I mean, you look across baseball, there are 15, 20 teams really struggling to figure out what their TV situation is. So they're really going to be a little cash strapped for the next 5 to 10 years. Teams like the Dodgers, team like the Yankees, team like the Mets who have ownership that's willing to spend, teams like the Phillies who are willing to spend. I think we're going to be looking at this as kind of a 5-year window. I don't know if I would call it the super team window, but it is certainly going to be a window where we look at it and go, okay, the top dogs, the top teams that are spending are the teams that are getting to the World Series.
Because I think you're going to see a lot of teams that look at their roster and say, well, we can't compete with that, so let's reassemble our minor league system. Let's reassemble our ability to find the young players so that we can get to a winning window when it open up. It kind of feels a lot of teams might be looking at what the Cardinals did, whereas if you're these top spenders, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Mets, maybe the Red Sox, you look at it and you say, cool, we'll just keep buying these guys. We'll keep buying talent to keep us at the top. So I'm with T-Bone. I think you'll probably see 3 to 5 years, and then what does baseball look like after that? What does the landscape look like? Do some of these teams that are refreshing, however you want to call it, do they establish themselves maybe as a deeper roster?
I think it's a one-off. I think we'll see baseball revert back to what it has been for more than a decade now, which is you get into the postseason, and could next year then a 1 seeds advance? Sure, they could. I think it's just as likely you see 2 6 seeds in the World Series facing off against one another, because that's what the sport has become, man. The postseason, especially in those 3-game series in the wild card round, and you can say the same thing, honestly, about the 5-game series in the DS. If you've got a dominant bullpen, you've got a real shot. That's what makes this so compelling and also so frustrating if you're in a front office is I've got to find a way to construct a team that gets through the gauntlet of the 162-game schedule. And the postseason has no resemblance for the first 2 rounds of what the regular season was. Look at some of the teams that advanced, guys. The Guardians had 1 starting pitcher. The Dodgers have 2 starting pitchers. The Yankees kind of have 3 if you really want to include Clark Schmidt as one of the guys that you can trust in a postseason series, compared to these teams, man, the Cardinals had a deep rotation this year, which is crazy to say because none of us felt that way watching the games throughout the regular season. But none of these teams trust their starters at all. So to me, will this be a trend? I don't think so. I mean, even the Yankees this year won 94 games. They were a really good team. They weren't excellent. Their own fan base hated them for half of the season. The Dodgers, this was not the same caliber of team as what we've seen in recent years. The offense is amazing, no doubt about it, and that top three is as good as you'll ever see. But the pitching left a ton to be desired, and for a lot of the season, the bullpen wasn't all that great. They've come together at the right time. They got hot. They're scoring crazy numbers of runs now. And they're probably going to win the World Series, in my opinion. I think they're the better team going into this series. But is this something that we will see as a trend? To me, I would bet against it because that's generally speaking been the case for Major League Baseball. You get a big one, and then it kind of has that rubber band effect. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, we're going to dive into some NFL quick hitters, including a big-name wide receiver that might be on the move by the trade deadline. We'll tell you who that could be next here on 101 ESPN. So T-Bone is a little nervous. He should be, frankly. His team still has a real chance, the LA Rams, to win the NFC West. That division is wide open. And now it looks like Brandon Ayuk is going to miss the rest of the season with a torn ACL. The 49ers, weird vibes there, man.
Debo
weird
can't stay on the field.
Yeah, that team is
it's not looking good for them. The LA Rams are 2-4, but they're like a game and a half back of the Seattle Seahawks, who are currently in first place in the NFC West. And now Diana Rossini went on the Le Batard show earlier today and said, yep, Rams are willing to listen on Cooper Kupp. In fact, they're willing to eat money in Cooper Kupp's contract if a team is willing to give them the right price in return. Two-part question here. One, do you guys believe that Cooper Kupp will be moved at this year's trade deadline? And two, where do you think he will be moved if he is traded?
All right, let's make this easy for everybody. Yes, in the Kansas City Chiefs. Pretty simple. If you're the Rams...
Boy, that'd be nice.
If you're the Rams, you're getting out of, I guess, trying to get out of a contract of a guy that's just been unable to stay healthy for you, and they're probably viewing this as, look, I know Puka's hurt, but Puka seemingly is the guy that replaces Cooper Kupp, and we can open up some more cap space to better our team in other areas. If you're any team that has any Super Bowl aspirations, why wouldn't you take a chance on that? Does he get injured a lot? Absolutely. But can I get 5 or 6 games out of him from the end of the season to help me win a Super Bowl?
The upside is so big.
Yeah. If you're the Chiefs, this is the move. Amari Cooper, I thought, was the move for the Chiefs. This is the move for the Chiefs.
When healthy, he was really good, even this year.
I think he will be traded. Where he goes, Chiefs is a good spot. Honestly, Baltimore would be a good spot for him. There's going to be multiple teams making calls for him. Chiefs make a ton of sense, though.
The Jets probably are like,
one more. We want more. We want more. Yeah,
he has
love
no previous
star power.
relationship with Aaron Rodgers, though, so he's clearly out.
When you said another wide receiver is going to get traded,
I could see Pittsburgh getting in on this. That would make a lot of sense for them.
Yeah.
Although, if Russell Wilson doesn't throw across the middle of the field, never mind.
I thought Devontae Adams was getting traded again. Asking out for another team.
I think he will be traded. Kansas City makes all the sense in the world. I mean, they're going to need somebody.
Chargers just stays in L.A.
Yeah, I don't know if the Chargers will make that move, though. They still feel like they're a year or two away from making this move. Yeah. And I feel like Kupp's a win-now move.
That's a fair point. Commanders?
So, that would be fun. I don't know. Well, they're not. They could trade them NFC. I don't think they're worried about him being their long-term.
If they're trading Kupp, then they're not worried about another team going on a run because they have him this year either.
I'll say he ends up being with the Chiefs, though. That'll be my guess as well. He makes so much sense.
What a move.
Again, you just hope that you can keep him healthy by the time you get to the playoffs.
The Bucs make a lot of sense.
Did he just get traded?
No,
he's already gone.
I just thought because Chris Godwin got hurt last night because Todd Bowles was a dummy and had him in the final minute of the game.
His not as long, but
yeah, Godwin broke his ankle because they were trying to make it a one-score game with a minute to go. God, that was so stupid. And he gets hurt. He replaces almost 1-for-1 what Chris Godwin was in that offense. So maybe you could see them make a move for him as well.
He has a connection to LaFleur. LaFleur would have been on the coaching staff with
I feel like Green Bay has the receivers that they need, though. I don't think receivers are a weakness for them. Maybe.
I mean, Kupp's better than everybody they have in that room when he's healthy.
You're right.
If you're any team that has aspirations, you take a chance on this. You give up whatever you can if you believe this is the year to win a Super Bowl. Heck, if I'm the Baltimore Ravens, I'm calling about it. If I'm the Buffalo Bills, I know I just got Amari Cooper. Why not load up?
You know what else would make sense is a team like the New England Patriots. Young quarterback. Hey, we're going to sign Cooper Kupp for the next 3 years. We're not just having him for this season. We want him for beyond. We'll give him a contract to just rip up the old deal, give him a new one. I could see a team with a young quarterback getting in on this as well. I don't know if that's an in-season deal, but I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. Bring him in, and if you're the Patriots, hey, if this works, we'll keep you here long term. If not, we'll cut you at the end of the year, and you get to find your new team, and we'll both go our separate ways. I could see something like that as well. That would make some sense to me. The Chiefs make the most sense, though. God, that would be such a perfect fit.
All right, calm down over there.
I'm dreaming of that one, man.
Keep the saliva in your mouth.
I hope it doesn't happen.
I actually kind of hope it happens.
You mentioned the Ravens, Alex. Last night, they looked unstoppable.
Yeah.
Their offense has reached a new level over the past few weeks. They look amazing. Derrick Henry is terrifying in that offense right now. Lamar Jackson looks like his MVP self again. Over the last 4 weeks, they have scored 35 points against the Bills, 41 points against Cincinnati, 30 points against Washington, and then last night, 41 points against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Do you believe that the Baltimore Ravens are currently the best team in the NFL, despite the record?
Yeah, I do. and I've stuck with the Chiefs up until this point, and I still think the Chiefs are probably neck and neck with them because I just can't discount Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. But they're just a different being right now. And the reason Lamar Jackson looks so good is because Derrick Henry is unstoppable. Because every single time, and I saw the stat earlier today, and I wish I still pulled it up, but after a run, Lamar Jackson completion rating is at like 78% because defenses don't know what to do. Do we go after Derrick Henry? Are they going to throw the ball? Is Lamar going to run? They are multidimensional now, where in the past it's been one and done. He just belittled me.
No, I'm serious. Good word.
He just belittled me.
Sorry, keep going.
Because my vocabulary isn't up to BK standards. I didn't go to Harvard.
Standards. Forget my standards.
Nobody's up to Bradford standards. I don't even know where I was going with this. But their offense, to me, is as dominant as you can ask in the NFL. And if Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry can stay healthy and keep this offense rolling, and I think some of this is Mark Andrews staying healthy too, because he brings another element into their game. Their defense, you know exactly what you're going to get every single game. They'd be the team I'd be fearing most right now.
And it's just a different dominant, right? You know, we'll talk about teams in the past of like, oh, they can run the ball, they can pass. Yeah, they don't run the ball like Derrick Henry, though. Baltimore's going to start the game. They're going to punch you in the mouth, and they're just going to run heavy with Derrick Henry. They got two tight ends that can catch the football, and Likely and Mark Andrews, on top of Zay Flowers, Bateman, who looked pretty good again last night, and Lamar, by the way, can turn on the Jets and run as well. It's just a totally different style of dominance that we've seen, and I don't know how long. So, yeah, I think last night was the cherry on top for me to go, you know what? They probably are a legitimate threat now in the NFL.
They are. They're a threat. They're still not my number one team. And I promise you this is not me being a homer. It'll sound that way. The Chiefs are the number one team until proven otherwise, man. They beat them head to head in week 1.
Their quarterback has more interceptions than touchdowns.
Off of a centimeter.
6-0.
And
they're the last undefeated team in the league. When they went up against the Baltimore Ravens, the Chiefs, Derrick Henry had 13 carries for 45 yards. The Chiefs have the best run defense in the NFL so far this year. They have not allowed a 100-yard rusher since last season against the Las Vegas Raiders when they had 2 of them for the course of the season, which is insane. This is a team right now that is doing everything they need to in order to win. It's not sexy. They are not winning with style points. It's not even fun to watch half the time. But the Chiefs are the best team in the NFL until proven otherwise, man.
They've got to go get a wide receiver.
If
they get a wide receiver, then I will. I mean, look, it's tied for first right now because I do think. They didn't
have a wide receiver against the 49ers, though, and it didn't seem to hurt them. And the 49ers are, while not a great team, a good team, and they beat them handily.
Yeah, but I mean, Patrick Mahomes didn't look great in that game.
They won 28-18.
I get it.
I don't know how often we have to see this where this is the best defense in the NFL, man. It is. The Chiefs have the best defense right now.
I also will say this, I don't think they were playing Baltimore, or they were playing Baltimore at the right time. You know, if they ran into Baltimore today, I would probably take Baltimore.
I probably would as well, but if that's a playoff game, I'm not taking them.
Oh, no, if it's a playoff game, I'm taking the Chiefs.
Because I think Steve Spagnuolo will find a way to make that offense look mediocre.
You ask me who's the best team in the NFL now, and I said the Ravens. If it's the playoffs, I'm taking the Chiefs any day because Lamar Jackson, much like other quarterbacks that I don't like, i.e. Dak Prescott, you don't have the skill set in the postseason like you do in the regular season.
That's fair. All right, last thing here. If we assume, I think this is fair, the Chiefs, Texans, Ravens, and Bills are currently the top 4 teams in the AFC. Chiefs, Texans, Ravens, and Bills. Those are the teams that are currently leading their respective divisions. How are you finishing off your 7 playoff teams this year?
Oh, in the AFC? Mm-hmm. Do I have to? Can I just stop at 4 and, hey, whoever gets in, congratulations. Nobody in the AFC East.
It ain't easy, man.
I mean,
this is why a couple of weeks ago I said I'm not out on the Bengals just yet.
Yeah. Honestly,
give me some time. I think the Bengals are going to finish in the top 7.
Probably the Steelers, probably the Bengals, and then honestly throw it up in the air and who cares? Because the Chargers could do it, the Broncos could do it, the Colts could do it. I don't think it matters after those other 2 teams. I do think the Steelers and Bengals are in that because everyone else is. I mean, the Browns don't have a quarterback anymore. Raiders are in shambles.
Just the Browns didn't have one anyway.
I know, but nobody's believing in the Broncos. The Dolphins and Jets, no. I think it's the Steelers.
It's the Broncos. I think the Broncos today would be my 7th just because of their defense. I think the Broncos formula is very similar to the Steelers formula.
Yeah.
Both of them can get in because they have an elite unit on one side of the football, and that this year is going to be enough for somebody. It might be the Bengals offensively. It might be the Broncos or the Steelers on the defensive side of the ball. I think those are the teams that I can point to at that bottom half of the AFC. Sorry, punched my microphone. That I can consider to have an elite unit. I can't say that about anybody else, dude. It's not the Colts. They don't have one. Maybe the Chargers defense. I'm not sure it's elite, but it's really good.
I'm not putting any stock into Bo Nix in that offense. Like, I know you said totally the defense.
So go ahead and back the Colts instead.
I told you. Can I stop at 4?
I think for sure it's probably, for me at least, Steelers. I agree with look. I don't think they're winning a playoff game.
Agreed.
But I think they're getting there. Bengals, I think, will get in. I think that they've played better over the last couple of weeks. Granted, they had the weird game against the Giants. I think they're still a playoff team.
That's 6.
I think it comes down, I think that final spot comes down to, I agree Colts, I agree Broncos are going to be in that conversation. I think the team we're sleeping on, and it's a really big if. If Tua stays healthy, Miami can still get in.
They've got a good defense this year.
Yeah, and now that Tua's back, I think he's supposed to be back this week. Yep. That's what the reports have said. If he gets back, he can stay on the field. We've seen that offense. Look, why is that offense not played well? They didn't have Tua. Everything is all about timing in that offense. I'm not saying Tua is a top 5 quarterback. He is the guy that drives that offense. With him returning, I think you're going to see Miami end up being that last playoff team.
I can't do that because I don't know what Tua is going to look like when you come back. I mean, with all these concussions, you got to think that this guy's going to be skittish there on the field, and one hit could completely demoralize a team.
I've seen it, though, before with him, and he came back and played pretty well. This is the stretch where they've got to get it done. Arizona, and then you do have a Buffalo game. That's not going to be easy, but Arizona, LA with the Rams, the Raiders, and the Patriots. They should win those 4 games. And if they do, you'll be sitting at 6-5 with a real chance to be able to get back into the postseason mix. So you're right, T-Bone. They're a team that should not be totally slept on right now. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Alex has an interesting note on the Blues versus the Winnipeg Jets, a game that you will see tonight here on 101 or here tonight on 101 ESPN. Alex's pregame coverage starting at 6. This is the matchup that has ultimately doomed each of the last 2 Blues season. How do they avoid that going into this game tonight? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you and talking about my friends over at Classic Air Care. If you're in the market for a new HVAC system or a company that's going to take care of you and your old HVAC system, Classic Air Care is there for you. They've been there for people in the St. Louis area since 1926, making people feel comfortable since then. I've been using them since 2016. You get knowledgeable technicians when they come out. You get timely service calls. When you call and schedule, you get out there. They come out there quickly, especially if you're a part of the maintenance agreement, and they're able to fix the problems that you have. But I'm talking to the people who need a new HVAC system because now is the time to check in on it, because after January 1st, government regulations are hiking up some of the fluids, the liquids that they use 15 to 20% more, which is going to raise the prices of the HVAC system. And so if you get it now, you're going to avoid those hiked costs for a new HVAC system. Plus, there's financing options available for you over at Classic Air Care. Give them a call today. Have them come out. Check out your unit if it's old. If you want to just pounce on this before you get into the deep winter, or obviously once you get into the hot summer once again, Classic Air Care is going to be able to take care of you. Call them today, or you can schedule online, classicaircare.com.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Blues back in action tonight as they take on the Winnipeg Jets. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7. The Blues made some news earlier this morning as well as they announced a 2-year contract extension worth $7.5 million with forward Jake Neighbors. And the St. Louis Cardinals made a couple additions to their coaching staff as well today as they named John Jay to the staff officially. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet. Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See him at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, so over the last couple of seasons, the St. Louis Blues have not done the amount of winning that they would have liked. Part of that is because things just trended in the wrong direction 2 years ago. There was a million different things that went into that. Last year, they didn't necessarily have the talent in place to be able to do that. But, Alex, it goes back to one matchup in particular that you want to watch tonight that could indicate whether or not this team's going to be able to keep things on the rails. What do you see from the last couple of years with the Blues going up against the Winnipeg Jets that you're hoping to avoid tonight?
Let me see if I could channel my inner Bradford Bruns here. Winnipeg has found a way to wreck the Blues early seasons. Not as good, I know. 2 years ago, we all remember the Blues started off 3-0. You beat Columbus, you beat Seattle, and you beat Edmonton. And after that Edmonton game, I remember us being on the show Monday morning being like, this is a different team because you found a way to eliminate Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and picked up the shutout.
It's the 2-year anniversary of that game, by the way.
I don't like that sign at all because...
The Edmonton game, not the Winnipeg game.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, because looming beyond that Edmonton game where I was ready to jump on the Stanley Cup or bust bandwagon once again, Winnipeg shut you out 4-0, and then you rattled off 7 consecutive losses. That was that 8-game losing streak that Armstrong had to have the press conference in. Last season, you picked up points in 3 of your first games. You lost in a shootout to Dallas, but then you beat Seattle and you beat Pittsburgh. You lost to Arizona. So you're sitting at 2-1-1, feeling at least better about the start of your season for a lot of uncertainty for that roster. Then you lose against the Winnipeg Jets the following game, and then you rattle off 5 losses in your next 8 games. Guys, Winnipeg has been... We all remember what the Blackhawks were for the Blues in the early 2010s. They were always the kryptonite for St. Louis. You couldn't find a way to get past them.
And then they traded for Troy Brouwer. Everything was beautiful.
And then they fixed it. Which, by the way, I put in my top 5 moves just for you buddy yesterday. Yeah.
I think he's in the mix for 5.
Yeah, I had him at 4 because the offer sheets are just uncertain. But I put him at 4. Anyway, the Blues have been unable to pick up back-to-back wins against this Winnipeg Jets team since 2019. They did not beat them at all last year. And not so much like they didn't beat them. You lost by 2 or more goals every single game last season. Winnipeg has been the Blues' kryptonite over these last few seasons, and they've been the one... It feels like they've been a one, here's a Chris Rock reference for you, to slap them in the face and remind them that they're not as good as they think they are. And this is an opportunity for the Blues to slap back and say, nope, we're better than what you're giving us credit for. Winnipeg has not lost a game yet this season. Winnipeg has unbelievable goaltending. But this is always the time, at least in the last 2 seasons, that Winnipeg has kind of put the Blues back in place, and then they've had to refigure out who they are in the early portion of the season.
Yeah, 2 years ago, you lose the first 3 matchups, 4-0, 5-2, 4-2. You won the third matchup in that one, 3-0. Last year, you lose 4-2, 5-2, 4-2 in the 3 matchups against Winnipeg. So you have lost now 6 of your last 7 meetings against this team, and you have given up at least 3 goals, 4 goals in 5 of the 7, at least 3 goals in 6 of those 7 games.
You've won 2 games against this team since 2020.
Gee, are you serious?
Yeah. Yep, you've won 2 games against them. You won on November of 2021.
What do you think it is that they give that gives the Blues so many issues?
Well, if you look through it, at least last season, it's special teams. Last season, you scored 1 power play goal out of all 3 of those games, and they were 100% on the power play twice out of the 3 games. But it's goaltending. You're a team that still is trying to figure out who you are at 5-on-5, and when you're doing that against Connor Hellebuck, it's not an easy task to do. Meanwhile, they're a team that knows exactly who they are at 5-on-5. They've got Kyle Connor. They've got Nikolai Ehlers, Mark Scheifele. They trade for Gabe Vilardi. They're going to wear you down offensively. Kind of like what the Carolina Hurricanes did. The only difference is, man, they, at least early on this season, they don't miss when you make a mistake. I think their shooting percentage right now as a team is at like
15%.
Yeah, I mean,
really high.
it's towards the best in the National Hockey League, if not the best. They're the best offense right now in the National Hockey League overall. They're a team that knows who they are. They're in their cup window, and the Blues are still establishing that. That's why I said, like, these last 2 seasons, it felt like the Blues were like, hey, we're better than people are giving us credit for. But then they take on Winnipeg, and that's a team that's got cup aspirations, and it says, nope, you're not. And then the Blues have to redecide who they are as a team.
This might be a weird comparison, but for college football, like as a Mizzou fan, I always look at the Kentucky game in the past. They don't play them this year, but in the past, Kentucky is the team that flips up a mirror and says, this is who you are. Look at it and find out if you like what's in the mirror. Mm-hmm. For a lot of the times in the past, that reflection has not been kind to Mizzou. They would go up against Kentucky, they would get beat, and you'd realize, oh, Missouri's not a real contender in the SEC this season. Because if you lose to Kentucky, this has just generally been the case in recent years, you win 7 or fewer games over the course of that season. Because Kentucky doesn't typically beat the best teams in the league. But if you are below them in the standings, they will beat you. They always take care of business against those teams. That's what I feel like about Winnipeg. Now, Winnipeg's better than that. Winnipeg is a real contender in the Western Conference, in my opinion, this year. They've got the goaltending. They are sound structurally. Like, they've got all of the elements that you'd look at. But they don't have a ton of star power. This is not a team that they've got a Matthew Tkachuk or a Connor McDavid or anything like that. Scheifele's really, really good. Morrissey is a really good defenseman. I'm not sure either of them would be considered to be elite at their respective positions, though.
You know what they have?
Hellebuck is their guy that's elite.
But you know what they have? They have chemistry. Look at their line combinations. The top 2 have been together for about 5 or 6 seasons with the exception of Gabe Vilardi. Scheifele, Connor, Nikolai Ehlers, Adam Lowry. These guys have been there for a long time. It's the chemistry that you want to build up so that when you have it, you keep throwing it out there. You asked me earlier, BK, and you're totally right with putting that mirror up to showcase who the Blues are. Because they hold that mirror up to St. Louis and say, you're not good offensively. Look at all of these goals, 2 goals, 3, 2, 2. The 2 times that the Blues have beaten the Winnipeg Jets, going back to 2019, Winnipeg has not scored more than 2 goals. They won in a shootout against them, 3-2, and then they shut them out 3-0. Yep. And so if you eliminate their offense, that gives the Blues the opportunity. But the mirror is held up saying your offense is not good.
And it's still not very good. I think we know what this team is.
But your defense has improved, which is why I find it fascinating.
The defense is really good, man. Not only do they play well with their actual defensemen, I think the forwards have been much better, much more responsible this year than they were in the past. And I think a lot of that goes back to the bottom 6 forwards that they've added to the group. I think Broberg is a much better forechecker, a much better guy in his own zone. Holloway is a much better forechecker, a much better guy in his own zone than what I was prepared for with him being as young as he is. I'm curious to see what that looks like against Winnipeg, man. This is a really good opportunity for them to be able to showcase this is who we are. This is the structure that we play. Stylistically, we know exactly what we are. And over the last couple of years, I don't think that was always the case. Yep. I think the Blues at times were kind of fighting who they wanted to be versus who they were. I think the Blues have a pretty good idea right now of what they are and what it takes every night for them to be able to win. They knew against the Islanders, hey, this is going to be a really boring game. Stay sound structurally and gets to the end, we're going to have a chance, and when we do, take advantage of it. They knew Carolina was going to be a very different game. Now, it took them a little while to get to it, but they ended up being able to come out on top in that one. This is going to be a different game from either of those two. There's a little bit of a mixture of the Islanders with the Carolina Hurricane style. This is a really fun matchup, man, because it will tell us who the Blues are early in the season. We'll find out. Yeah. Find out if they're up for the test.
They impressed me with that Hurricanes game because of their ability to adjust. I think they planned to take on the Hurricanes the same way that they took on the New York Islanders, and they can't do that because Carolina's a better offensive team. And then in the second period, they adjusted and said, okay, we got to bring it to them a little bit more. And what did they do? They forechecked. 2 years ago, last year, they weren't able to adjust on the fly. They were able to adjust from game to game, which is why last season you really didn't see those valleys as much as you did 2 years ago. But just one more time going back to that, kind of holding the mirror up, when you got shut out to the Winnipeg Jets 2 years ago and then you lost 7 more, your offense, 1 goal, 2 goals, 3 goals, 1 goal, shutout. It showed you that you weren't good offensively, and then the Blues didn't know how to figure out their offense. That's what you got to avoid tonight against Winnipeg.
I'm more curious about the defense and the offense, though, because I know they're going to struggle to score. I think that's going to be the case for most of the season. Even if they score 4 goals tonight, it's not going to significantly alter the way that I view the offense. Defensively, though, there are some indicators that this team's going to be better than what I certainly expected prior to the season. If they're able to do that again tonight against Winnipeg, I'm going to start to really believe that this can be a defense-first, goal suppression style of team. Maybe has a better chance to make the playoffs than what I previously expected. With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We're going to dive into the junk drawer coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Let's dive into the junk drawer here on BK and Ferrario with Alex and T-Bone on BK. Alex, what do you got for us today?
Guys, you know I'm all about proper etiquette when you're out in public, right? I talk about restaurant etiquette, grocery store etiquette. I'm very aware.
Absolutely.
So Friday, when we were out at Centene, I had a moment. In the bathroom, standing at the urinal. There was a hockey tournament going on, so gentleman stood next to me and used the urinal. Already strike number one. Don't stand next to me. But anyway.
Was there an open one?
Yeah, there was.
Yeah,
I was on the far
that.
left. He went right into the middle.
And
like, come on, dude.
There. So he
I thought there were three. Yeah, there was so much space. Anyway, we're standing there, both doing our business. Luckily, he's not speaking to me, which is nice.
Oh, that's a big no-no for me.
And then in the middle of us going, he has a exacerbated toot.
Okay.
Just probably a good 3 seconds.
Nice.
Wow.
You let it simmer, pun intended. And then it was just awkward because I was still going. And so I turned to him, and I broke my own rule, but I thought it was funny in my head. And I looked at him and I said, you might want to go check yourself after that.
No.
And then I chuckled.
You didn't do that.
I did. I chuckled, making light of the situation.
Oh, no.
That man did not.
Yeah, you wonder. Why?
I kind of got the deadpan stare, and then I looked at him and I zipped up, washed my hands, and ran out of that bathroom as fast as I could. I didn't know what to say. It was
nothing.
No, it was an uncomfortable situation,
Sure,
and I knew
for him too, man.
I made it more.
Not just you. He was probably over there like, damn. He definitely heard that. He's thinking in his mind like, man, I did not think that was going to be as loud as it was. This guy is definitely, he knows. I've been seen.
I was trying to break the tension for him, though, because it was uncomfortable.
Well, he's never going to see you again. The last thing you want in that scenario is the guy next to you to acknowledge what just took place. That's it. If we could both go our separate ways and pretend this never happened.
Yeah.
This is going to be best for everybody.
You know, in the Friends episode when Chandler's like, sorry, I'm Chandler, and I make jokes in uncomfortable situations. That's kind of where I was at, because I knew I was going to be at that urinal for a little bit longer. I was still midstream, and I looked over, and I was trying to make him feel better about it. He didn't.
Made him feel worse.
Yeah, well, that's why I ran out of there.
Did you not laugh when it happened?
No,
because I would have laughed when it happened, and then I probably would have had to say something.
Well,
but otherwise, the goal is just to pretend you heard nothing.
Well, no, but I did.
And hope it don't stink.
But I didn't want to acknowledge it because I figured he would be feeling uncomfortable, but it was so loud, and I knew we were going to be there for a little bit, that I was like, okay, well, I probably should make him feel better and acknowledge what just took place.
What's worse?
Probably could have used a better line than you do want to go check that.
I was going to say,
that's the problem.
Yeah, what's
the
worse,
joke
that
was the problem.
or was that your shoe or something like that?
I should have probably turned to him and said, do you have corn for lunch?
Now, that'd be worse, too.
That's disgusting.
Well, you got to find something to make light of the situation.
Just say, hey, man,
I would look to the right and
I mean, technically, I did say you good. I was just making sure he was good. This is why I used the stall.
T-Bone, you also have a story from the weekend. Yeah. I don't know how you're going to be able to top that one. But
I'm not going to be able to top that one.
How were your travels to the Illini side of the state?
They were good, but, my Ground Point Zero was my old hometown, small town Illinois.
Home of the flying squirrels.
White squirrels,
Ground Point Zero?
Oh, no. they don't fly there?
No.
Okay.
No. It'd be cool if they did. They're just white.
Yeah, okay. Come on, man.
But
squirrels don't fly.
Tell me you're from a small town if you're at the local watering hole and you're at the restaurant, and at the table behind you, you just hear the random conversation that they're having. And you hear the guy go, I guess they're talking, well, they had to be talking about hunting. Yeah, I don't go waste my time at a deer stand to get up early. I just go in my backyard and hunt. That was it. Sit on my back porch and hunt for the deer. I looked to my dad and I said, boy, we are in the wrong place right now.
No, honestly, that checks out where you were at. Yeah. I don't see anything strange with that.
I couldn't help myself.
If you overheard that and you were like, sitting in Kirkwood, that's where I would probably be like, well, this is an odd statement.
Yeah.
Even for only, it felt a little out there.
No, it feels about right.
No, man.
No.
That seems like something that would be said at the Sody shop.
I don't need to waste my time in the deer stand. I just go to my back porch.
A little bit of news to pass along here. This comes from the St. Louis Blues. They announced that Nick Leddy has been placed on IR. It is not LTIR, not long-term injured reserve, just IR, retroactive to last week? I guess
Yeah, it's that Minnesota Wild game, so they're home. This is roster manipulation. Texier comes off, and you needed to make a roster move. You're not sending anybody down. Letty goes on IR, and now you just keep him on there until he's ready to come back.
Blue said yesterday it's going to be a little while on Nick Letty. Said once he gets back, it shouldn't be once he's able to skate again, it shouldn't be too long before he's able to return to the lineup. But quote, it's going to be a little bit of time here before he gets himself back on the ice.
I take this as, look, he took that shot off of his skate against Minnesota right before that goal was scored. I don't think it's anything severe. Bannister has said it's day today. I take this as they've looked at him and said, hey, we're good. Get 100%.
I think this also tells you about Ryan Suter. Hey,
and P.O. Joseph.
We're comfortable with what we've got here. Suter, Joseph have done a really good job in their new spots in the lineup. Take your time. There's no need to rush Nick Letty back into the lineup. In fact, right now, please don't rush Nick Letty back.
He's eligible to return on Thursday. So that's when he's able to come off this. I don't expect him to come back Thursday. I would probably say after this road trip, you see Nick Letty come back.
For what it's worth, a couple of other updates yesterday. This comes from yesterday at practice. Bannister said Texier is, quote, pretty close. We'll see where he is tomorrow. I'm going to guess that is related to this. I would assume he is not just pretty close. I'm assuming he's in the lineup tonight. Yeah. Sonny is getting closer. Him not being available for games in preseason. They had to be careful with him. Wanted to make sure he is all the way back before they put him into the lineup. Toropchenko, quote, looked good today. Skated yesterday by himself. Was out there yesterday at practice as well. According to Bannister, looked really good. So
here's where it gets really interesting. I would anticipate one of, if not both, Toropchenko and Sundqvist to join this team on the road trip. And if now that the Letty IR has taken place, if you activate, and Toropchenko's not on IR, so you don't have to activate
just
him.
Sonny.
He comes in, no problem. If you activate Sonny, there is a corresponding roster move.
It's going to be Walker.
It's either Walker or Kapanen, and I think you're right, it's going to be Walker because you can't do Perunovic until Letty's back.
Correct.
So
you don't have the depth.
Yeah. Now. And I think if Letty was healthy and with them, Perunovic would have been the guy, but it's going to probably be Walker.
I feel for Walker. I still would have him in the lineup over Kapanen. I will give credit where it's due, though. Kapanen has been better than I expected. He's made a couple of plays. He's been noticeable out there, and not for the wrong reasons. Kapanen's been better than I thought he would in a fourth line role. I am a little surprised they're going with Texier on a fourth line tonight.
I don't think he stays on the fourth line very long.
I don't either. I'm not even sure why you start him there. That being said, though, I don't know who else you would have gone with in this scenario. I would have preferred to have Walker on the fourth line over Kapanen, and they just don't have an option right now with Sonny and Torpo both being down.
The Carolina Hurricanes, it was obvious when they put Kapanen in that they were hoping to get a little bit more offense, and they did get the offense from the fourth line. Like they contributed. It seems like they're leaning into that a little bit more. And right now, Shen, Joseph, and Holloway are providing that physicality, that conscience line that the WTF line was doing. Texie is a big body. I just don't know how much he uses that. So it'll be interesting to see how they use a fourth line tonight against a Winnipeg Jets team that you're going to have to play physical against.
He's Alex Steen on BK. Blues back in action tonight against the Jets. Alex will have the pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock. Buck Drop with Joey and Curbs coming up tonight on 101 ESPN at 7. Coming up next, we have not discussed with the three of us in studio just yet the Missouri win. That was real close, a little too close for comfort, and Illinois winning a huge game at home with T-Bone in attendance. We'll talk about both of those games, what our immediate reactions were to those next year on 101 ESPN.
It's time to call Tracy Bibb and her team at Allstate if you are in the market for a new insurance company, or maybe you've got one and you're not happy with them. That's where Tracy comes to play. She's able to save you a ton of money. You hear me talk about her or with her all the time, whether you've got accidents prior in your past, or maybe the rates have just hiked for you over these last couple of years, and you want to find somebody who is out to take care of you and your family. That's where you need to call Tracy Bibb. Always offering competitive rates, always checking in on you, making sure you understand what falls underneath the umbrella of your protection for your home, for your car. She's even talked about hail damage to your roof. Right now is a perfect time to give her a call and check in on the claims for that issue. So call Tracy today. It's a super simple process. All you need to do is mention my name, Alex Ferrario, and she will walk you through the entire situation. She'll give you the free non-committal quote. She'll walk you through what steps you need to take, and then she'll cancel your insurance for you to get you with the Bibb agency. Again, 314-328-4260. That's 314-328-4260. It's no fib. You're always in great hands with the Bibb.
So I was listening to the Fast Lane yesterday, and I got upset. I got defensive, actually, is the way that I would like to phrase it.
That happens a lot.
Yeah, tell me about it.
The boys were talking about Mizzou.
The boys.
And they were talking about how this is not a year that anybody expected it to be, and man, how disappointing. And I was thinking to myself, dude, they're 6-1. They just won over the weekend. What are you talking about? And then I thought about it a little bit more. I became less emotional, tried to remove myself from the situation a bit. I was like, you know what? They're right. They're right. This team,
get angry.
This team is not great, and it took a miraculous finish for them to win at home on homecoming against, and I believe to be an average Auburn team. I don't think they're bad, like their record indicates they are, but I also certainly don't think they're great. So they're right. This has been a disappointing start to the year, no doubt about it. And yet everything is still on the table for them. I don't think they're going to win out. I don't think this team is good enough to be able to win out. I think there are real questions about Brady Cook and whether or not he's going to be healthy enough to give them what they need against Alabama this weekend with the potential high ankle sprain. But they're 6-1, and that means everything that you wanted before the season is still right there for the taking for you. Alex, before we get more big picture, how did you feel about that Mizzou win for you? Because I could understand really any takeaway. I think the first takeaway is Brady Cook was awesome.
Yeah.
And what he was able to do coming back from a serious injury, and anybody downplaying this, like, just stop. To come back from that, that was quite the moment. Homecoming, a local kid, unbelievable comeback. That was great. But when you look at what Mizzou did on Saturday, what was your biggest takeaway from that game?
I mean, it was hard to judge because you didn't have Brady Cook. And I think the first thing my thought was, man, people were wanting Drew Pine to be the starting quarterback of this team because that looked ugly. I think the biggest takeaway I had with Mizzou was they have a team that always can keep them in football games. And I know the outlier is the game that just completely blew them out of the water. Was at Texas A&M. But even a game like Auburn, where Auburn is much better than their record shows of how good they are defensively and can keep themselves in football games, Mizzou kind of bides their time and can wait until they throw it all in there in the fourth quarter. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Offensively, I still don't think they're that great of a team. I still think they're a team that's average at best. Defensively, they're going to have really good moments and really bad moments. I look at them the same way I look at like 5 or 6 other SEC teams. And after that Auburn game, I still feel the same way. Mizzou could be a playoff team. They don't have anything that gets me excited about it. They don't have any area of their team that they're great at that I look and say that's what's going to carry them into the postseason.
I think their defense is pretty good,
But the Brady Cook comeback was a moment for me where it was like that could set your season on a positive track or send it on a negative track.
I felt like that was the moment that this team needed to galvanize itself. They haven't had any of those so far this year. Now, I know Brady mentioned that after the game, but a lot of it's been just these really close calls that feel more almost like relief after the game than they do jubilation.
Yeah, like Vandy missing a field goal in overtime.
Yeah. The game against Boston College, you're like, man, that was way too close for comfort. Didn't feel good about that win. Early on this year, Murray State, Buffalo, you did what you were supposed to. There was never going to be any real takeaways from either of those. And Massachusetts, again, same thing. Nothing really that you can take away from that one. This was the first win where you left and you're like, damn it, yes, that's the team that I wanted them to be. And it was only for a quarter. But in that fourth quarter and late third after Brady Cook got back, that is the team that I thought Missouri was going to be heading into 2024. I don't know if that is something that they can latch on to and say, okay, we are that now. We have found this version of ourselves, and we can just ride this train, ride this wave of momentum to the end of the season. I don't know. But it felt like that's what happened last year coming out of that Kansas State game, where they found a way to win that one, and then they just kind of rode that wave of momentum the rest of the way. Maybe a better comparison is the Kentucky game, where it took them so long to get going, fake punt, fourth down, boom, let's go from there. And then the offense, the rest of the season was excellent for Mizzou. But that's the hope. And it's nothing more than hope because they haven't given you enough to believe that that's going to be the case. That's kind of the way that I felt coming out of that one. Everything's still on the table, but
it's all on the table.
There's a lot of questions.
It's all on the table for this Saturday. The Saturday's it. Because
correct. If they lose this game, college football playoff is out.
Yeah, because they're better than Oklahoma, South Carolina, Mississippi State, Arkansas, or at least they're supposed to be. I expect them to win those games. It's Alabama. And the wild part about this is you're going to really find out what this team's made of because it's not just Alabama. It's Alabama's backs against the wall also. Because if Alabama loses, playoffs are done. And so this is it. And I believe Grant told us yesterday that it's homecoming for Alabama. Like, this is everything. This is going to be the game that determines all of the insecurity for Mizzou fans of like, oh, man, they're good, but I don't know how good they are. This is it.
Totally. On the other side of things, Illinois is having the season that Mizzou had a year ago.
Yeah.
Because they had no expectations coming into this season. Everything changes once the expectations are placed upon your team. This year, things feel as bad as they do because Missouri was expected to be great. The expectation preseason was college football playoff or bust. And when you go into a year with those kinds of expectations, man, 6-1 just ain't good enough. It's about the way that you go 6-1. It's about losing to Texas A&M the way that they did. That is what the focus is on instead of, hey, 6-1 through 7 games, pretty damn good. A lot of teams that would love to be there. Illinois also 6-1 at this point in the season, but it feels a lot different because of the lack of expectations and how they've gone about this. T-Bone, you were in attendance on Saturday. You picked the Illini as your 3-point play in that one. They did not only cover the spread, they won outright. 21-7 against a mediocre Michigan team, but former national champions. This was a huge win for the program. I'm not going to undersell it. What did that win mean to you as an Illinois fan? What did that win mean for Illinois fans buying into what Brett Bielema is selling as well?
I think it, buys in the fact that people can believe in Brett Bielema and what he's doing, even though, what the difference is between the year that he's having and what Drink had is Drink has the flashy kind of recruiting numbers, right? Drink's always, you look at the class, you go, wow, look, they brought in this 5-star. They were in on Ryan Wingo until the very end when he decided to go to Texas after flipping 5 times. Illinois hasn't done that. It's been a whole bunch of 3-stars, and they're still kind of in that. And now Brett Bielema in his latest kind of presser has been saying, hey, this helps us with our NIL war chest. So, it's starting to build momentum for Bielema, and we'll see if he's able to build upon it. Like, he had that year 2 years ago, and then they just fell flat on their face in 2023. And I thought they were going to do the same thing here. it just makes me believe in what he's building as the program. And like they've won in multiple styles this year.
Yeah.
When they beat Nebraska on the road, that was a offense. Luke Altmaier's playing great football. Guys, Luke Altmaier in this game against Michigan threw for 80 yards. That's it. He was 9 for 18.
9 passes.
Yeah. That was Brett Bielema football at its finest, where they were able to just run the football 187 yards on the ground. They did it with basically 2 different running backs, along with Luke Altmaier getting involved in the running game. It was just Big Ten football, and defensively they were sound. They were getting pressure on the quarterback. They're able to stuff up the run a lot.
D-line's good.
Yeah, they were able to stop the running game a lot better than I was expecting, because that's been kind of their Achilles heel, especially against that Penn State game. Brett Bielema's made them a top 5 team in the Big Ten Conference this year. I don't think they're in that top tier. Like, I expect them to lose this weekend at Oregon against the number 1 team in the country, but you're talking about them. You know, you get to talk about them playing a number 1 team and not looking at it going, man, they're going to get just absolutely killed in this. They stand no chance. They at least, you can look at them and go, hey, they're a top 25 team again. They've got 3 top 25 wins on their schedule already this year. And the best part about it is Brett Bielema's got them in the college football playoff, at least in the back burner of the conversation.
That Matthew Bailey kid, he's unbelievable, dude.
Yeah.
What a matchup nightmare for opposing offenses. You can put him in the box. You can put him in the nickel. He lines up everywhere. You have to know where he is at all times. Michigan had no answers for him. He was an absolute nightmare to go up against, and that's the kind of thing that you need. If you're going to be this kind of a team, you need somebody in every game that steps up and creates some kind of a matchup problem for the opposing offense. Not expecting great things this weekend. Going up against the best team, in my opinion, in the country, on the road, at Oregon. But, dude, when was the last time that in back-to-back weeks, Illinois was the spotlight game on national television?
It's been a while.
I'm serious.
I have no idea the answer to that.
It's been a while.
I would imagine it's 20 years almost.
Probably the team that Carey was on, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
they're on CBS in back-to-back weeks, 2:30 time slots.
they're
That's
on
crazy.
at the same time as Mizzou and Alabama, and I'm actually a little bit more intrigued with Illinois, Oregon.
I'll be going back and forth. I'll have both screens going.
Because I think Illinois can at least make it competitive with Oregon.
They're both, I haven't seen what the line is, so it's
Illinois
a 22-point line right now in favor of Oregon. I think Mizzou is a 13-point underdog, so both of those lines are really big. I would take the underdogs on both sides.
I would too.
I think Mizzou should cover that. I feel like that line is way bigger than I expected it to be on the Mizzou side of things. I thought it would be like 6.5, 7 touchdown in favor of Alabama. I think that's a little big on the Illini as well.
Yeah.
I don't feel like that should be that big.
I think Oregon's flashy offensively, and we see them put up numbers. I don't know how good they are defensively. I think they're good, but I don't know if they're great. To where I think you could see maybe Luke Altmaier have a little bit of another game where if he plays
Their
well,
interior is
they'll be in it.
excellent when they're fully healthy. Oregon's. Their interior of the defensive line is very, very good, but I don't know what their health situation is there. All right, with Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Let's play a game of Bet It or Forget It here on 101 ESPN. With Alex Ferrario, I'm Brandon Kiley. I bet exclusively over on the Circa Sports app in the state of Illinois. And if you haven't already downloaded it, dude, what are you waiting for? Now is the time to do so. We've got some great college football this upcoming weekend. We mentioned the Mizzou game. I actually like them plus the 13.5 points. I like LSU on the money line this weekend, Alex. I like Vandy plus 19. I like Oklahoma plus 20. There are some spreads that I think have gone way too big this weekend. I'm going to take the underdog side of a lot of these things. $10 bet wins you $140. It's a 4-leg parlay, and I bet exclusively on Circa because I'm getting better odds. Those are all better odds, and if I would have bet the exact same thing over on FanDuel.
This is why you always use Circa Sports Illinois for everything. You've got those future parlays that you could put together. You go those tight money line splits. Just go for the Blues game tonight. I'm going to take the Blues on the money line. If I go to DraftKings, it's sitting at plus 120. If I use the Circa Sports, sitting at plus 135. That's what they're always about, making sure you're bringing in the most money possible. If you or someone you know may have a problem with gambling, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text ILGAMB to 833-234.
Ooh. 314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are betting it or forgetting it here on 101 ESPN. Alex, let's start out with this one. Bet it or forget it. Giancarlo Stanton will be a Hall of Famer when all is said and done. Giancarlo Stanton in his major league career has 429 career home runs. He has led the league in home runs twice since entering the league in 2010. He has an OPS of over 1,000 in the postseason, and now he just won an ALCS MVP, and he has the opportunity to lead the New York Yankees to their first World Series victory in 15 years. He has won an MVP during the regular season, 5-time All-Star, 2-time Silver Slugger. Alex, bet it or forget it. Giancarlo Stanton will be a Hall of Famer.
Forget it. I think the injuries are what's going to plague his chances of getting in. He's played over 150 games 3 times in his major league career. For how stingy some of these baseball Hall of Fame voters are, I don't know if I could see them putting in a guy who hasn't been able to stay healthy for an entire season more than twice.
Oh, he's a tough case. I'll bet it. I'll bet that he ends up making it to the Hall because I think he'll probably surpass 500 home runs in his career. I mean, he's only 70 short of that, and even without his healthy seasons, he should be able to get there.
3 more years he's there.
Yeah, that'll make him, there's only 28 players in baseball history with 500 home runs. That'd make him 29 unless somebody else gets there that I'm forgetting about. I think he'll probably get in with that. So I will say bet it, but I think it will take him a couple years to get off the ballot and in.
That's where I'm at as well. I think this is going to be a huge series for him, man. Legacy-wise, if he ends up having another big one where he comes through in the clutch and you have memories from this series where he's the guy that gives the Yankees an opportunity to win a World Series, it shouldn't be this way. I think it's silly that it is this way, but it is what it is. Derek Jeter was a unanimous Hall of Famer for a reason, and it's because he did it for that team. And if you see Giancarlo Stanton do something similar, I think he's going to be a Hall of Famer because of that. Again, I don't have to like that, but I agree with T-Bone. I think he's going to get to 500 home runs, and typically that's the round type of a number that gets you into the Hall. Alex, what do you have for us?
Guys, bet it or forget it. Philip Broberg earns Norris Trophy votes this season.
Forget it, man. And it's not because I don't like him.
I'm not saying he's winning it. I'm not saying he's in the top 3. I'm saying he earns Norris Trophy votes.
It's just...
Reminder, Justin Falk earned Norris Trophy votes 3 years ago.
I'm going to say forget it.
I'm going to say forget it as well. I'm going to play the field and just say it probably takes a year or 2 of him to play like this before he starts to get kind of public recognition, and then he will get to start receiving some votes.
This isn't going to surprise anybody, but I'm going to bet this one. I look at Miro Heiskanen, and I'm not comparing the two, but Heiskanen got votes in his second full season. He put up 8 goals.
How many minutes did he play?
He played 23 minutes a night.
That's the thing.
I mean, he's 21 right now, Broberg.
Damn.
He's going to get up there. Like it or not, their top pairing isn't Parayko and X. It's Broberg and Falk.
That's crazy, man.
He's going to put up points. If he puts up 40 points, I think you're basically automatically put into the conversation. And then what do you look at defensively? Because he plays in every scenario. Power play, penalty kill, and even strength. I don't know what it's going to look like when you go through lulls, but I think you're going to see a Norris Trophy vote if the points are there. And I think the points are going to be there.
Guys, bet it or forget it. Illinois will end up with more wins this season than Missouri.
Moore is doing a lot of work here. Yeah. I think there's a pretty decent chance it's a push. I think there's a very good chance both teams win 10 games this year. And then it just comes down to the bowl game. So I will say forget it, because I think they're both likely to finish with 10.
Yeah, forget it as well. I think you got 10 for each side, and then it's Illinois versus Oregon, Alabama versus Mizzou, and I don't think either of those teams win.
I'm going to bet it. I think Illinois, now granted, I think both teams are probably more likely to actually end up with 9, because I think both are susceptible to a surprise.
Totally fair.
And I think the one for Illinois is at Rutgers. Everybody looks at that game and goes, oh, Illinois is ranked, Rutgers not. Rutgers, they're feisty. They're kind of like the the South Carolina.
Arkansas too.
Of the SEC. They're that version of the Big Ten. But I will bet it. I think Illinois can stop them, and if they do, I think they finish 10-2. I think Mizzou's going to stumble somewhere and go 9-3.
By the way, just to go back real quick, Giancarlo Stanton, the 500 home runs point that you made. Here are the list of players with 500 or more home runs in their major league career that have not made the Hall of Fame. Barry Bonds.
We know why.
Yeah.
Albert Pujols, not eligible yet.
Yeah.
A-Rod.
We know why.
Sammy Sosa.
We know why.
Mark McGuire.
We know why.
Rafael Palmeiro.
We know.
I don't know. I guess, yeah, I think he did.
Manny Ramirez.
We know why.
Miguel Cabrera, not eligible yet. And Gary Sheffield, who I think should be in. And I think it's kind of crazy that he is not.
So what you're saying is they should check Giancarlo Stanton?
They should. Oh, stop. We can't do that.
I know.
We'll get in trouble for that
was
stuff.
a joke, ladies and gentlemen.
We just got to make it very clear.
That was
there is no slander here.
Joke.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Bet It or Forget It. Guys, bet it or forget it. John Jay coming over to the St. Louis Cardinals is a reminder that Skip Schumacher will be the next manager.
Bet it. If he doesn't take a job this season, that is what's going to be looming over the head of the Cardinals throughout this year. The same as Yadier Molina was last year, and then it disappeared when he didn't show up. But it is going to be the talk all season of if Ollie stumbles, and look, he's in a tough spot because the team's not going to be great. But when he stumbles, it's going to be, things will be better when Skip takes over. Things will be better when Skip takes over. So bet it.
I think I'm going to bet it too. Wow. And it's crazy because I think Ollie, of the 3 years he's been here, I think he's been good in 2 of the 3. I don't know if he was good 2 years ago. He had a bad roster, and I don't think the record actually tells the story. I just thought there were weird decisions by him. This year, I mean, we talked about it. They were in minus run differential, and he had them above 500. So, but I think I'll bet it. And it's an easy sell for ownership, right? Oh, things aren't going well. Fans already don't like this idea of a refresh. Oh, look, shiny toys. Skip Schumacher's back. Everybody wanted him. He's back as the manager.
And then you give that manager the excuse of, he hasn't been given a great roster, and so we give him a little bit more leash to struggle with.
I'm going to forget it. I think they like Ollie. I do wonder if Skip maybe comes back in a different capacity, but I don't think he's going to be the next manager of the St. Louis Cardinals.
Why would he come back in a different capacity if he's not going to be the manager?
To have a job.
And then takes a job as a manager next year?
No, just takes elsewhere, yes. Like ends up going, I don't know what jobs are going to be made available next year, but surprises happen. Maybe the San Diego Padres job opens up next year.
Wow.
Okay.
Didn't know. The Padres are already negotiating an extension with Mike Shildt.
I've seen how that went.
Last time that he started negotiating for a new contract,
there were philosophical differences. These guys are on the same page.
The only reason I bring up that one is because I think Southern California would be the geographical area that Skip would like to be in if he could have his pick. Maybe Atlanta opens up. I thought there was a chance that would happen this year, but everything went to hell for them with all of the injuries.
Nicker's been rumored to want to retire, so
maybe the Phillies job comes
Terry
open.
Francona.
It's possible if they have another disappointing season next year.
Didn't they just extend Thompson though?
I haven't seen anything on Thompson.
And even if they did,
I thought they
those
extended
contracts
them
are meant to be broken. Baltimore, who knows what happens there with Hyde? I think there's a potential for a lot of good jobs to open up this time next year. So maybe you just stay in the game. keep yourself with an organization that you know well, that's really comfortable. You know a lot of the guys, good relationships here. I can see
you
it.
get the Yachty role where you just collect a check and not have to do anything.
Dude, that's a good gig.
Yeah.
That's a real good gig. All right, this one comes from a 636. Alex, better to forget it. The goalie tandem for the Blues by the end of the year will be top 10 or top 5, in the NHL.
Bet it. Easy. I don't know a tandem that's going to, like right now, New Jersey with Jake Allen and Jacob Markstrom is probably going to be towards the top, which is awesome to see Jake Allen having that success. I just look around at the Western Conference right now. Connor Hellebuck's going to just easily carry his tandem to the finish line no matter what. I would argue that the Blues have the second best tandem if you're going to consider Hellebuck and then ex-goaltender. They've got the second best tandem in the Western Conference. I'd argue they've got the best tandem in the Western Conference.
Yeah, I'll bet this as well. I mean, I thought it was pretty telling how comfortable they are with Joel Hofer. I mean, watching him play, you can see why. Where he pitches a shutout. I don't remember who they played.
The Islanders?
It was a long weekend. Against the Islanders, and then they go right back to him against
That was
Carolina.
on Thursday, man.
So, I know, but there was Saturday in between there. I will
worked
bet
on
it.
Friday.
You did?
Olden type of weekend, man. You good, man? You good, bro?
Hey,
That's what Alex should have said in the restaurant.
Yeah, you good, bro?
you good, bro? I could make an argument that Joel Hofer should be starting this game tonight. Sounds crazy to say from the Bennington honk. Look at the numbers with Hofer against Winnipeg. He's been really good against the Jets.
I just hate doing those.
Oh, I do too, but if you
Player
get,
versus
especially
team
with a
matchup.
Central Division team that you already know how to properly scout, but I mean, Bennington's numbers are fine as well. But this goes to the point of a tandem that I'm making. I could make an argument for either goaltender to start in a game that feels like it's a must-win.
I'm with you. I will say I'm betting it. I did not think this was going to be the case before the season. I've seen all of, 5 games? I'm in. Yeah, go ahead. Final thing here, Alex.
He's all aboard.
Better to forget it. We'll do this quickly. Lamar Jackson will win his 3rd MVP this year.
Bet it.
I'll bet it as well. I don't know if there's anybody playing better football than him right now.
Jaden Daniels going down over the weekend was huge.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and bet it. I don't know who else you could possibly have in this mix. If you're going to put some money on somebody else that is a little lower, Jordan Love, Joe Burrow would be the 2 that I would target. Jordan Love right now is 12-1, Joe Burrow at 14-1, and the reason why I would say those 2 guys, I think Jordan Love and his team have a chance to be the number 1 seed in the NFC. I think Joe Burrow and the Bengals are going to eventually get into the postseason, and the only way they're going to get in is if he goes nuts the rest of the way. And then you've got the timing of it is right, where he's playing the best football at the right time as voters start to look at these awards. So those would be the 2 guys that I would throw into the mix. But yeah, I think Lamar's going to end up winning it. All right, coming up next, has the Blues top 6 done enough to stick together? We got to talk about Jordan Kyrou. We'll do that next here on 101 ESPN. Hey, it's BK. It's time to unlock your inner champion. I had a friend over the weekend actually ask me, hey, how's that going with Victory Men's Health? Can you tell me a little bit about it? It's super easy. You go to their website, victorymenshealth.com. I've got a minute to tell you about how great they are. You can spend much more time on their website, though, to learn exactly what they can do to unlock your inner champion, because that means something different for everybody. For me, it was going in. I first got a lab draw kit, and that finds out some of your levels, and they specifically were targeting, okay, where are you at on your testosterone? Found out where I was on that. I was okay. But then they went in and did a little bit of a deeper dive for me. Micronutrient levels to find out exactly where everything is. That included a bunch of different vitamin deficiencies that I have. And now I've got better brain function because of it. I have better energy because of it. I just feel better on a day-to-day basis. So whether it's something like that for you, maybe it's erectile dysfunction, weight loss goals that you're trying to meet and are difficult to meet on your own without a little bit of help from the outside, Victory Men's Health can do it for you. Low testosterone, they can help you out with that. To find out more about them, go to victorymenshealth.com. That's victorymenshealth.com.
Tanner Hendrickson here at the Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues back in action tonight as they take on the Winnipeg Jets. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 6 o'clock with Alex Ferrario and Joey Vitale. Then Joey will join Chris Kerber for Puck Drop at 7. And the Blues made some news earlier today as they've signed a 2-year contract extension with forward Jake Neighbors. They'll have a $3.75 million AAV, and they placed defenseman Nick Leddy on IR. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
With Alex and T-Bone on BK. Hey, coming up at 2 o'clock, John Mozeliak is expected to speak to the media. They have officially announced now Brant Brown is going to be the next hitting coach of the St. Louis Cardinals. So his hiring has been officially announced. The Cardinals have also announced that they've made a hire for the new director of player development as well. So those two hires have been now made official. John Mozeliak will speak about those coming up at 2 o'clock. You'll hear it right here on 101 ESPN. So stay tuned for the Fast Lane. 2 o'clock, John Mozeliak will be speaking. You'll be able to hear that on 101 ESPN. Alex, the top 6 has been up and down this year. It's been a bit of an adventure. The bottom 6 has been great. I have no questions about them right now. Top 6, some games you feel good, other games not so much. You're never going to believe this, but Jordan Kyrou is a play that has come into focus once again. He has not scored a point in his last 3 games, has not scored a goal, and I believe it's his last 5 games. Here is what Drew Bannister had to say about Jordan Kyrou earlier today.
I think there's a lot of looks. I think Jordan himself would say he's got to shoot the puck more. Like, the opportunities are there, and I think we'd like to see him shoot the puck more volume. But there's plays where there was an opportunity to get the puck to the net, and he was trying to make a play that just didn't connect, which could have been a high quality chance for us. So again, like with everybody, we're trying to be more aggressive, play on our toes. As a group, we still have to clean up our own puck play, so we can get to a forecheck, be aggressive, get pucks back, and then the offensive players can, play to their strengths.
Alex, what have you seen from Kyrou? How does it compare to that? What we just heard there from Bannister?
It's wild to say he needs to shoot more, which I'm not disagreeing with Bannister, because he has passed up a lot of looks over these last couple of games to try and make that extra pass in the neutral zone, which is why I just don't like that combination. They always try and make the skill play rather than what the Joseph line and the Buchnevich line has been doing, is putting it in and going after it, because Kyrou's got 13 shots on goal in his last 3 games compared to the 4 shots on goal that he had in his first 3 games. But it's not a line that you can rely on to be consistent offensively, because it's too much one and done. What I liked about Kyrou playing with Pavel Buchnevich, and I think there for a little bit it was Bolduc. They played Schenn there on the wing for some time. But what I liked about that line combination in the first 3 games is that it wasn't one and done. There were only 4 shots on goal from Kyrou in those first 3 games. But the zone time was there for them. They were creating and generating those cycling opportunities to set them up for offense. The Robert Thomas line, you've just seen a lot of go into the zone, take a shot, and then you're chasing after the puck. But that top line in itself, it's not generating anything offensively, and then defensively it's also been a struggle. Combined with Kyrou and Thomas, 0 points in their last 3 games and a combined -4, and they're playing 19 minutes and 49 seconds and 22 minutes and 15 seconds. To whereas you go to the first 3 games of the season, Thomas was 4 points in 3 games, still a -2. They were still looking for the defensive side, but he was generating points. And Jordan Kyrou, as we all know, was a +6 or had 6 points and was sitting at a +4. I just don't see that line as a line that you can throw out there against the other team's top line. And that's what you use Robert Thomas for, to eliminate the other team's best offense and still find ways to generate offense. Robert Thomas has been on the ice for 8 total goals against this season. If you go back to last year, he was on the ice through 6 games of the year for 5 goals against. So still not great, but you can see the difference here.
I think there's a clear comparison for Jordan Kyrou, and I don't know how people are going to feel about it, but to me, the guy that I've pointed to, and it's partially because of the contract and when they signed their respective contracts, is Alex DeBrincat. Alex DeBrincat's a good player. I think most Blues fans would be like, yeah, that's a guy that I'd be interested in having on our team. Alex DeBrincat last year, Alex, how many games do you think he finished with 0 points in for the Detroit Red Wings? He finished the season playing all 82 games. How many of those games do you think he finished with 0 points?
Say 23.
I was going to go 20.
41.
Ooh,
Exactly
I thought that was
half of
high.
his games, he failed to score a singular point. Finished the year with 67 points, 27 goals, 40 assists overall on the season. That does not make him some like spectacular player, all-star caliber player, anything like that. But he's making big-time money, making $8 million per year, very similar to what Jordan Kyrou is. I think that's the kind of player that Jordan Kyrou is. He also had some extended stretches where he did go through some goal-scoring slumps. So I think sometimes I remember the same conversations about Vladimir Tarasenko when he was here, where it was like, man, he doesn't really help you defensively. He's not contributing offensively right now. It's really frustrating. And then you get into the postseason and you get to that 2019 run. The Blues do not win the cup without that guy on your roster. It's frustrating sometimes. There are nights where he's just going to completely float through the game and you want more out of him. And the Blues will need more out of Jordan Kyrou eventually. If they're going to become the contender that they want to be, he either has to be traded or he has to become more than what he has been so far this year. But you also need guys like this on your roster, man. Mm-hmm. He's got the ability to create offense for others, and he's got the ability to put the puck in the back of the net. Those are two things you can't teach. So it's frustrating sometimes, and I agree with you, Alex. I'm not sure he should be on that top line long term. It's why I liked him on the second line, because you could get him away from those top matchups. But I think we're overstating some of this. It's been a few games, man.
Yeah, I think if you were to ask Steve Yzerman and give him truth serum, he'd tell you that Alex DeBrincat contract was a mistake. Put him in a bad spot because that guy was not the player that they thought they were getting when they signed him to be a point producer and to be a top-line player. That's why they had to go get Tarasenko. That's why they had to go out and bring in Patrick Kane, because they were looking for somebody to play with Dylan Larkin.
How about Kirill Kaprizov? Good player?
Totally.
Last year in the first 9 games of the season, how many goals do you think he scored?
3.
2.
Here's the thing about Kaprizov. And Bill Guerin said this to us.
Failed to record a point in 4 of those games.
Bill Guerin said this to us when we had him on. He said, even when Kaprizov is not offensively, or maybe he was telling Joey this, you always notice him on the ice because he works his ass off to try and get the puck back. And that's kind of my point with Kyrou. When you're not noticing him in long stretches, if he's not scoring, that's where you look at it and you're like, man, you've got to impact the play elsewhere. The player that I thought of, and I think a lot of people were hoping Kyrou could become, is Jason Robertson. Now, that's
But when I watched Jason Robertson against the Blues, and sorry to cut you off, he's not that guy.
Do you know how many games he went last season without, or do you know how many stretches he went where he didn't record a point 3 or more games?
I don't know.
0.
He also played with better players than Jordan Kyrou has.
I mean, he's playing with Rope Hintz and Joe Pavelski.
It's pretty damn good.
I mean, Robert Thomas isn't that guy? You wouldn't put Robert Thomas in a Rope Hintz conversation?
In terms of goal scoring?
No, in terms of a centerman. Setting them up for offense.
Sure, but I'm talking about the entire line and the offense that they're producing. No, this line does not produce the way that offensive line did. I think it has the potential to, but it did not produce the way that the Dallas Stars offense, the top line produced last year, the last couple of years.
They would, but they did it the way where they put 2 guys together. It'd be Hintz and Robertson, or it would be Pavelski and Robertson, and then you'd rotate that third one in. It's not that, and again, I'm not taking Robert Thomas off of the hook. I'm not pointing at Kyrou and saying this is the problem, because Thomas should be one that's producing just as much. I just look at those two, and they play 2 polar opposite styles. And if you're going to rely on Robert Thomas to be a top-line centerman who can shut down the opposition and create points, it's what he did last year, where he was nearly a point, or he was over a point per game player, but also getting the heaviest minutes against the top lines and finishing as a positive. How you can't deploy Jordan Kyrou in that spot. To me, we talked about the top 6 if it's done enough to stay together. I'm fine with the second line. If you want to juggle it up, who cares? But Jake Neighbors is obviously producing now. Pavel Buchnevich is producing for you. Your third line has been very productive, and it's noticeable every time they take the ice. Your problem still lies with that top line, because Kyrou and Thomas aren't a recipe that works. But the question is, then what else do you do? Because you're not taking Buch off center. Who's the winger for Robert Thomas? That seemingly is still the biggest problem for this team.
Somebody on the text line said, 45-year-old Joe Pavelski, clearly such a great player last year. Bro, do you even watch hockey? It was arguably the singular best line in the NHL last year. Like I don't know what to say. The Blues need more out of Jordan Kyrou. I agree. We're also way overanalyzing 3 games. We're talking about a 3-game stretch here, man. And if this continues for the next 5, we can have further conversations about it. But for the first 3, he had multiple points in each of the first 3 games of the regular season. And so I'm supposed to now believe like he stinks because of the last 3. And I know that's not what you're saying, Alex, but I think there are some that are representing it that way. I think he had a great start to the year. And his game tailed off a little bit over the last few games. Let's see what it looks like tonight against Winnipeg, man. Let's give this a little bit of time to breathe before we immediately are ready to be vultures and be like, let's get over the dead body, get after it. Well, let's get out of here.
And it's more so the matchup with Kyrou. It's not Kyrou himself. It's the player that he works well with. So that line that was Robertson, Pavelski, and Hintz, that was the line that they used the most. The expected goal percentage last season was 54.7%. Kyrou, Shen, and Saad last year was at 52%. It's the Kyrou Thomas conversation that we're trying to make work, where there's nothing wrong with having an $8 million player who's a 30-plus goal scorer on your second line. But you got to have somebody who plays well and can create offense with Thomas. And
Their problem is they don't have a second line center.
Yes, because Booch should be with Robert Thomas. Rocky was asking us that. Booch, I'm sorry, I'm going long.
He's Alex Steen on VK. We'll get to the rewind next. If you guys missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Tomorrow, we will reveal how we did on our pick'em from the weekend. There was just too much Blues and Cardinals news to get into today to have that as a part of the show today. So we will have that for you guys tomorrow. Again, podcast page, 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app. You can always check us out on YouTube as well, youtube.com/101ESPN STL. For Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. Don't forget John Mozeliak speaking to the assembled media coming up here in just about 5 minutes or so. So keep it locked in right here on 101 ESPN. You'll hear Mo at 2 o'clock. The Fast Lane's coming up at 2 as well here on 101 ESPN.